We got some big news out of the Red Sea and Yemen. The U.S. and the U.K. have launched massive retaliatory strikes. The rebels, the Houthi rebels in the region, were blocking the Red Sea over Israel's actions in the Gaza war. And now the U.S. and the U.K. have entered this conflict substantially. There were already concerns based on Iran-backed militias attacking American bases in Iraq. So the concern here, whenever we get stories like this, is that the conflict is escalating towards, I'm going to say it, some type of World War III type situation. I know I went a little light on that one, and the reason why is people think World War III means big superpower fights big superpower. But right now we're looking at Venezuela potentially going to invade Guyana. We've got conflict in Europe already. There's some reports, I'll have to defer to Luke on this one, Sweden is preparing for war because they're afraid of what Russia's going to do. You've got this expanded conflict in Ukraine. As I mentioned, Israel and Hamas, this war is not abating, and now we've got the U.S. and U.K. directly involved, plus everyone is aware of the Pacific theater in Southeast Asia, in which the fears are that China will make a move on Taiwan. So all of this is laid out before us. So when we get breaking news and videos of these massive airstrikes, it's alarming. But I'll tell you what I think was alarming first is when we got these reports several weeks ago that the rebels were blocking access to the Red Sea. That's shutting down a massive portion of global trade, including energy trade, oil, etc. This is the route that goes up to the Sinai Peninsula. They're doing it to target Israel. Egypt's affected. The Mediterranean is affected. And now we're looking at the potential for serious war. Now, aside from that, we're going to be talking about, of course, we're in Iowa. This is really, really awesome. The caucuses are on Monday, and a blizzard is about to slam into us. A very serious one. I gotta tell you, Iowa, it's beautiful. All of the trees are just blanketed in snow. There's a foot or two of snow everywhere. It snowed last night during the show, 2 or 3 inches, and now we're getting these warnings. This blizzard's going to shut everything down. But I gotta tell you, I'm excited for it. They're saying it's going to get down to minus 22 degrees, and we'll be having a good time. But of course, we also must bring up John Fetterman, who nobody wants to believe he alluded to white genocide in South Africa, but he was talking about Israel, defending Israel, and he said South Africa should not talk about genocide because of what's going. He says when you look at what's going on there now, they should stay out of it. It's like wait, hold on. What did he mean? What did he mean? Now everybody, of course, thought he meant apartheid, right? No, he clarified. He said he meant Sudan? Okay, well, look, Michael Malice was right about this guy, whatever it is. But a lot of people think that his initial comments were actually about the farmers that are being killed in South Africa, so we'll talk about that. Before we get started, my friends, head over to Twitter, go to x.com, and follow Based Records. BASTE Records. They're producing music. They're helping build the parallel economy. They've got a bunch of great artists. They got Chad Prather. They got High Res. And, of course, they got 5 Times August. All of these people have been on the show. We're big fans. And they're helping put together our Iowa show. So yesterday was Town Hall with Faith Ramaswamy, sponsored by Based Records. And, of course, we also have today's show, tomorrow's show, as well as Monday's live show with a live audience for the caucus. Shout out to Based Records. You can check them out at basedrecords.com. But again, follow them on X at Based Records, BASTE Records. And of course, head over to Timcast.com, click Join Us, become a member, because we're going to have that members-only uncensored show coming up for you tonight. And you don't want to miss it. That's going to be about 10 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be a lot of fun. And again, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this, a whole lot more, and especially the Iowa caucus, is Donald Trump Jr.
What's happening, man?
Doing a show here in Iowa, you know?
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Doing well. Although, moving to Florida, I realize I've gotten much softer. Coming here and having it be, it's like 20 when I got here. It's like, that's different when I'm used to it was 68 the other day in Florida. I was like, I can't go outside. It's over. So you got to reacclimate.
Right on. So I don't think you need an introduction. Honestly, I mean, your name. It's just
probably okay. Good, bad, or indifferent.
The son of the former and next president.
Well, God willing, God knows.
All right.
With what we're seeing out there right now, we need someone to do something different.
We got a lot to talk about, especially immigration, so I definitely want to jump into this because Elon Musk has been calling out. There's a bunch of stories. Some dude went to one of these facilities and broke in and filmed inside these illegal immigrant facilities that are being funded by the taxpayer. So thanks for coming, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got Luke Rudkowski hanging out.
Yeah, I'm in Miami, and this is something else. This is a little bit different here. But my name's Luke Rudkowski of thebestpoliticalshow.com. Today I'm wearing a shirt that reads, I identify as a conspiracy theorist. My pronouns are I told you so because I told you so. You could get it on thebestpoliticalshirts.com. We also released a Big Mike 2024 shirt that automatically was censored as soon as we released it. We just brought it back up. Get it on thebestpoliticalshirts.com because you do. That's that's why I'm here.
Did you have a
So much for
picture of
having
Big Mike, or did you just say Big Mike?
We had more than a picture.
Oh.
It's not family friendly.
Is it like the conceal carry, open carry one? That,
Yeah.
because it's
It's explicit. The 2024
All right,
is underlined by
we'll
something.
keep it family friendly here.
Very,
Ian's,
this is going to be for 10 o'clock, I guess. We
Absolutely.
can bring that back up later.
yes.
Big,
Okay.
big Mike.
Oh, yes.
We'll go,
All right, Ian, who are you?
big
What do you
and
do?
deep. I'm Ian Crossland. Happy to be here. And this weather reminds me of my childhood, man. And growing up in Ohio. Ooh, that's rough. It wasn't quite -10, so I'm going to get a taste of that. Dude, Don, if you want to harden up, do Luke's tactical training. He's over in Miami.
I do a lot of shooting, so we'll have to make that happen.
I do as well.
That's what I do.
Yeah, it's running, and man, I immediately, my core, I realized how fast your core gives out if you're not prepped to run and run and run.
I'm excited for the weather. They say it's going to be -22 on caucus day.
You got to experience it once if you haven't.
We were up in Alaska over the holidays, Allison and I, and it was -28, and it was fun. It was very fun.
Yeah, it's like the cold plunge trend, but you don't have to actually get wet.
Do you do that?
But your face
You know what? I
freezes.
actually do. Like, and I try my best to avoid some of the stuff that's gimmicky, but I think it's great.
What's your regimen?
It's
with
amazing for your dopamine. It's amazing to start your day. It's amazing for your overall health and well-being. But when you choose to do it, we don't choose to do it outside here. It's not fun.
No. That's that's a little different. No, like when I go work out, whatever, I'll go afterwards. I'll do something hot for 15, 20 minutes, and then do 5 to 7 minutes in that. And
you want to do it in the morning. The morning is the best time to do it. You don't
Morning
want to do it
better?
after. You don't want to do it after exercise because it stops protein synthesis.
Yeah, my problem is it's literally about time. Like part of it's the relaxation. So if I can do it after my workout, it's just hard for me with my schedule to be like, okay, I'm going to go work out, then I'm going to go about my day, then I'm going to come back and get sweaty and wet and dirty again.
Wake up cold.
But yes,
That's what I do.
you're
It's
definitely
amazing.
right.
Let's jump to the news. The first thing I want to show you guys is this video. Huge explosion in the capital of Yemen, Sana'a, after U.S. airstrike. This is war, ladies and gentlemen. So, I don't think we're getting any sound out of this, but there is sound. Yeah, sound's not coming through, guys. But we'll come back to that later. I'm not super concerned about people hearing popping noises. But this is the big breaking story. We've got ABC News. U.S., UK launch large-scale retaliatory strikes against Iran-backed Houthi militants in Yemen. The Houthis had made repeated attacks on the Red Sea shipping despite U.S. warnings. Now, we have this story from The Conversation, why Yemen's Houthis are getting involved in the Israel-Hamas war and how it could disrupt global shipping. Basically, there's a video. I mean, have you guys seen this video where the helicopter lands and seizes the shipping vessel? Yep. This is nuts. We had Eric Prince on the Culture War, and he just outright mentioned, I mean, this could shut down a majority of global shipping by controlling this route. The end result is fairly obvious. Massive escalation of war in the region. Iran, of course, has to retaliate in some way. So far, they've been having their militias attack U.S. bases. But this is a component of the Israel war in Gaza. And I got to tell you, it's actually really sad to see, because I remember when we got the breaking news about the Abraham Accords during the Trump administration, and how you get all these liberals and Democrats, these personalities, were claiming that it was nothing, that it was just paying off people, whatever, it's not real peace. And my attitude was, dude, you have flights traveling over Muslim nations to Israel, from Muslim nations to Israel. We are actually moving forward with the basic components of long-standing peace.
Business was being conducted.
Yep.
Because they probably always wanted to. A lot of reasons why they couldn't, but they changed that. And now, watching the region fall apart so quickly, the capitulation to Iran, and it's just insane, man. The adults were supposed to be back in charge, and
we all knew.
There's so much. You knew. I mean, of course you knew. You knew with the Afghan withdrawal, right? They didn't really want to learn how to win a war, but they wanted to learn about white rage. And the worst, I think, for me for that one, I think we discussed it last time I was on the show, was just watching, the Secretary of State get up there, before Congress, and do his thing. That he was, and I quote, shocked and dismayed that the Taliban did not install a more diverse and inclusive government. But no, I mean, I was like, you're joking, right? But they weren't. That was the Taliban that you've been fighting in a war for 20 years that throw homosexuals off buildings. You thought they were going to have a trans coalition in Islamabad. Come on.
Well, to be fair, perhaps he thought when China moved in and took over the region,
yes,
that may be a path they move. But no, that's actually unfair, because China has masculinity training for their young people, and they put out commercials or propaganda to get their young men ripped and ready for war.
They're women too. I watched a video of kids. This is how they're training the kids in schools: is they'll each have 2 basketballs that they're bouncing, and then they jump to the right, and they have the next basketball. So there's all these 24 basketballs in a circle, and like 12 kids, or there's a lot more than that actually.
Hey, but our kids know that there's 4,762 genders, so like we got that going for us.
And that doesn't even include the Chinese super soldier program that they also enacted and are actively genetically gene splicing individuals in order to become the next super soldier. So there's that. But this situation happening in Yemen is a pretty big deal. It's the United States, it's the United Kingdom. They just bombed the capital of Yemen with support of Qatar and Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of history here because this is the continuation of a previous campaign where the United States and the Saudi Arabians were essentially working with Al-Qaeda and a lot of Sunni rebels trying to get after specifically these Houthi rebels that are tied into Iran. So there's a lot of history here. There's a lot of declarations here. There's a lot of trade on the line. There's a lot of things at stake here that really are important to bring up during this matter, as of course this conflict could expand very easily to Iran. And if that happens, it's just going to be devastating.
I need to bring up a quick point. I think it was like 2 years ago. Luke made a comment on this show that Bill Gates was developing microchips that could function as birth control, and I just started laughing. I was like, Luke, get out! It is not true. And then I Googled it, and
of course it's true.
It's actually it's an implantable microchip that can be activated by an app that would turn on and turn off birth control. So for everybody who heard Luke just say that China is creating genetically engineered super soldiers
with gene splicing technology.
I know there are people watching being like, okay, this guy's crazy. From The Guardian, 3 years ago, China conducting biological tests to create super soldiers, U.S. spy chief says. Intelligence Director John Ratcliffe claims human testing aims to develop soldiers with biologically enhanced capabilities. Okay, fair point. Maybe the guy was lying.
But is it even surprising? I mean, you understand what they're actually playing to win. Like, is anyone actually surprised that they would be doing that? Like, I'm not even a little bit.
I'm actually surprised this story's from 3 years ago, not from 23 years ago.
But this is what we know about. Imagine the stuff that we don't know about. And to have another Chinese connection here, it was the Chinese that brokered a larger peace deal that first ended the war in Yemen just a few months ago. They brought Saudi Arabia and Iran to the table and said, hey, we're going to stop fighting each other in Yemen because this was a larger proxy war. I think right now the United States is restarting this war with Saudi Arabia, not just because of the conflict, not just because of the interest of Israel, but specifically for U.S. petrodollar hegemony,
100%.
For global hegemony, and to counter the Chinese here in this very specific region. And this is troubling because the Chinese are using trade as an initiative. They're saying, hey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, let's come to the table. Let's get some energy out there into the world stage. The United States is coming to this situation saying, hey, we're just going to bomb stuff here, and we're bombing one of the poorest countries in the world, when I think we could be utilizing a more diplomatic, a more kind of advantageous policy that would be better for America's interest and America's people. Because right now, with the open borders, the Yemeni terrorists and the rebels...
how many Iranian sleeper cells are all over the country right now? They're just waiting to be activated.
It's not even Iranian. It's ISIS that the United States previously supported. It's Al-Qaeda that the United States also previously supported. It's a lot of fundamentalists. It's a lot of radicals that could just very easily walk into the United States and wreak havoc on our way of life very easily with these stupid policies.
We have this tweet from Mario Knopfel. Statement from Democratic House member Valerie Howell saying these airstrikes on Yemen were not authorized by Congress. The Constitution is clear that Congress is the only authority that allows military intervention in foreign conflicts. Every president must first come to Congress and request military authorization regardless of which party he belongs to. I'm really surprised a Democrat came out and criticized unilateral military strikes.
I sort of feel like they've been really fine with war in Eastern Europe and sending, billions of dollars. And then you have beyond the proxy war, whatever happened to that Teixeira guy that was leaking that we actually had boots on the ground over there. Now he's disappeared for 6 months. We haven't heard anything about that one.
Maybe she's upset because it's not going. The missiles aren't being sent to Ukraine.
Perhaps. I mean, I'm surprised we actually have missiles left, given the way they've depleted our stockpiles. Also a real problem, especially given what you brought up as it relates to China being adversarial and really sort of encroaching on Taiwan and flying the sorties over the top of there. And, our allies are watching what's going on around the world, and we're sort of an embarrassment.
I wonder, I'm 37. In 2 months, I'll be 38. I wonder, were we just those around this age, like Luke and I are similar age, were we lucky in growing up in a time where you had these lesser conflicts that appeared, all around? Of course, you had Iraq and Afghanistan, but you did not have basically every region on the verge of imploding. The way we did it. But my point, I guess, is before I was born, of course, there was Vietnam. There was the risk of nuclear war with the Soviets. So maybe it's just a wake-up call for millennials.
Yeah, if you watch the borders change over the last 2,000 years in Europe, it's constant warfare taking over countries. And then World War II happened, Hitler, and then all of a sudden it stopped. And there was no more border changes because of the liberal economic order. We set up this global military police. Then you see Bosnia break off of Serbia, and that was like the one thing. Then the Soviet Union cracked apart, and it really diffused the tensions. I was talking to Scott Horton about this, and you could argue that we're actually in a state of de-escalation, but but I don't know. There's these internal conflicts now, and the things that you don't see on paper.
It feels, I got to tell you, when I look at what's going on with the war and the conflict and all this stuff, as well as what's going on with immigration, economics, it feels intentional. Like, it's almost like Joe Biden and the Democrats know they're on the way out, and if they can't have it, no one can. And so they're just, I mean, you look at Afghanistan. How is that anything but intentional? You did not have to abandon the Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night and not tell the Afghan security forces. I mean, line those things up. Let's say you decided for some reason you had to abandon Bagram. Okay, well, you tell the security forces. You don't do it in the middle of the night. You do it in a controlled manner. Let's say for some reason you couldn't tell them. You secure the materials and the weapons and you get rid of them before abandoning them to the Taliban. All of those things happening at once. Now you look at the southern border with the Biden administration facilitating illegal immigration. Yeah. It feels like he's this angry kid. The Democrats are playing ball, and they're like, if I can't play with the ball, and they're gonna chuck it over the fence so that no one else can.
Well, it feels like a child, right? Because I remember when that was going on, I picked up my son Spencer. He was like, I think 9 at the time. And I picked up from school as the Afghan withdrawal was going on, and he's literally 9 years old. And he's like, hey, Dad, why would we take out the army before like the people that helped us? You know, I'm not going to be that guy like, you know, my son was questioning, he's 3, and he was asking about nuclear proliferation on the Korean Peninsula, you know, the woke bullshit that you see, you know, out there, you know, with, you know, people sort of virtue signaling. But he was 9, and he was like, why would we leave $86 billion in equipment, Dad? That's a lot of equipment, Dad. Like a 9-year-old knew this. You know, and yet, you know, the adults back in charge didn't. So it has to be intentional. You know, the southern border, you could have just maintained Trump's policies, but, you know, that way you can't, you know, the great replacement theory, it's not a theory. I mean, it's reality. Of course they're doing this at this point right now.
I think it's also fair to understand that maybe what could have been happening with Afghanistan is a situation where you leave a lot of arms and weapons to have the Taliban counter Iran and Iraq in the region as well. As of course, there was also a lot of massive terrorist attacks that were just committed inside of Iran by ISIS rebels that also were armed by U.S. taxpayer dollars and even had American trucks with American businesses on the side of them. So when we look at the situation in the Middle East, I think it all boils down to the military-industrial complex and the intel agencies and the powers that be coming in there and just dropping a whole bunch of weapons everywhere and then saying, oh, there's bad guys picking up weapons that we dropped, that we paid for, that we told them to pick up against our geopolitical foes that were going against the U.S. petrodollar. So there's a lot of history here, especially with the war in Iraq that made Iran as powerful as they are right now. There's a lot of things that happened specifically in Syria, in Libya, that have created the current tumultuous situation right now. And we need to understand where a lot of these people are coming from, because the Houthi rebels, they are committing terrorism. They are blocking the trade routes, but they're also saying specifically, stop the war in Palestine, and then, of course, everything will calm down here. And of course, that war is not going to be stopped.
The war in Palestine. I mean, I remember when I first started seeing that. You see the imagery. The Hamas soldiers were carrying M4s. They weren't carrying the traditional AK-47 in a lot of the photos that I saw.
Yeah, that according to the intel reports, they got probably from Ukraine.
Ukraine or Afghanistan.
Yep.
Where we left, what was it, 47,000 or significantly more? So, I mean, I guess, you know, instability in the region works out great for the deep state and for the warmongers, but no one else.
Take a look at this article from Reuters. Iran seizes oil tanker involved in U.S.-Iran dispute in Gulf of Oman. State media. And it's retaliation. Okay, so Iran seizing an oil tanker? This is direct. Iran is no longer just using proxies to do this. Well, it is escalated now to, you know, nation-state level conflict.
Yeah, but the United States does similar action.
Yeah, this is a tanker called the Suez Rajan. It's changed names because it used to be a Greek oil tanker. They were selling oil or receiving oil from the Iranians and then the U.S. went and took the tanker from the Greeks, and they were like, it's ours now, and they sold all the oil. The Americans sold their oil for themselves, and then now they're taking the same tanker, they're taking it back, and because the casus belli that the United States had to seize that thing in the first place was you're using American financial systems to transact, so you're violating sanctions on Iran. Now we're taking it.
Well, I remember when the world had a big problem, my father's like, hey, if we're going to fix these countries, why don't we at least take some of the oil for ourselves and pay ourselves back? And that was a big problem for everyone. But apparently...
Yeah, well, that's the statement he said specifically with Syria, and essentially that's what the United States did. But there was also a very interesting news report. I don't know if you could confirm this or give us more details about this, specifically with Trump requesting a lot of the military personnel to be removed from Syria, and then the generals kind of lied to him about it.
Yeah.
So how can we move forward with a future Trump presidency? How is this going to be kind of handled and approached from here when clearly there's a whole other power structure here that's creating a lot of the chaos?
Well, listen, I think you have to clean house at these places, right? You saw it this week alone with Lloyd Austin. I mean, he's the Secretary of Defense. He's out. It's terrible that he has cancer, but we're, as you mentioned, we're on the brink of 3, now 4, perhaps different possible fronts for escalated conflict. And he's out of pocket for 5 days. They replaced him with a lovely lady, I'm sure, she was on vacation in Puerto Rico. That's wonderful, but you're the acting Secretary of Defense while the Secretary of Defense is in a hospital. The Biden administration doesn't know. They didn't bother to tell him till this week, and all is well, folks. No, but there is a component of it that's just showing you that this deep state, this military-industrial complex, they don't believe that they answer to the civilian chain of command. They're above and beyond. They know better. They haven't really done a great job of winning wars in the last, 50 years or so, but they still know better, and they're going to do whatever they want.
Let's jump to this story. We have a tweet from Elon Musk. He says, why are they hiding these centers? And of course, I highlight Elon Musk because when someone with 170 or so million people posts a video, people take notice. Mm-hmm. And the tweet here is actually, it's from @InfoUncensored. I believe that's what's watermarked in the video. This video is going so viral, I don't know the original source, but this is a man who goes into one of these migrant facilities, the Randall Island Illegal Immigrant Center, and he gets a view into all of the tents. I mean, this is a massive facility. We heard that, I believe it's in Chicago, the taxpayer is spending $7,000 per illegal immigrant per month. And they're bringing in thousands, and they're building these facilities. You take a look at some of this stuff. It is absolutely shocking. Here we go. Henry...
$84,000 a year, just so we understand. That's above median income in this country. Fairly significantly, actually.
I want everyone to understand what this means, because the Biden administration is facilitating this directly. This means that when you go to work and you make $50,000 a year, and you're wondering why your gas is expensive, why your food is more expensive, and why you can't afford to pay the rent, just remember that the illegal immigrant in Chicago is getting $84,000 a year in benefits that you are contributing to through your tax dollars.
That's crazy. That's a lot of money.
You get to pay for yourself, your kids, their schooling, their health care, as well as a few million illegal immigrants who, seemingly, because I know the rocket scientists and the nuclear physicists, they can't get into the country. But if you bring no skills and you're going to be a dependent, which means you're going to be on the Democrat Party dole and vote accordingly, you can come in with reckless abandon.
It's also incentivizing a lot of people to come in that, of course, will be taken instead of giving. Because if you created a situation saying, hey, you guys could make something out of yourself, but you have to work for it, there's going to be opportunities where you could prove yourself. That's something else completely different compared to, we're going to give you a bunch of free stuff. California, you get a free sex change. California, you get free health care. And then on top of this money that is given to these specific migrants, we have to understand there's also a larger economic cost to housing. The price of housing is going to be going up as there's going to be less available of it. The price of labor is going to be going down, specifically with a lot of labor now being available for a lot of workers.
And it's going to get worse.
Yeah, well, the hedge funds are buying all the housing. They want you to be permanent renters. It's again, I said it earlier in a speech today here in Iowa. Just if you had this sort of proverbial Manchurian candidate and you were trying to destroy America from within, what would you do differently than today's Democrat Party? And the answer, I literally cannot think of anything they could get away with beyond what they're actually getting away with that could make it worse. It's hard to believe.
It's almost like if you were trying to implement this plan to destroy the country, they got a pretty good one.
Oh, it's a phenomenal plan.
Must have cost them a lot of money.
It's doing great. Our enemies are laughing their asses off. China's just loving what's going on right now. They couldn't have orchestrated it better themselves.
Let me pull up this article because it's going to get worse. New York Post. Elon Musk warns migrants are, quote, coming for your homes after New York City kids forced out of the classroom. Now, the corporate press doing what they do best. I loved how they did this to your dad, Don. Elon Musk reports, he comments on what's already been reported. They call him a liar.
Yep.
I saw this happen with during the Trump administration so many times to your dad. He comes out and he goes, oh, now they're saying they're going to do X, Y, and Z. Media then reports Donald Trump lies about X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no. I reported on exactly what Don said, what Trump said 2 weeks ago. Elon Musk, there was a report in Massachusetts, I believe it was, and in New York, that they were suggesting that private residents give up space in their homes to illegal immigrants.
The lieutenant governor of Massachusetts. And that's the New York Post, owned by Fox News. That's conservative programming. Let's, air quote it. But conservative programming actually taking that approach. That tells you everything you need to know about our corporate media, even on the conservative side.
They want to put Elon Musk warns in the headline. They could have said Elon Musk highlights comments from Lieutenant Governor. They could have pointed out, but I'm not gonna roast the New York Post for simply saying Elon said it. Fine, he did. But the issue is that now you got the corporate press claiming that Elon Musk is lying or exaggerating in these claims when all Elon did was read the New York Times and then tweet. Here's a thing I read.
Well, they did the same thing to him about the DEI in the airplane thing. It's he's racist. He's like, no, I just want good pilots. You're doing programs that are choosing people that are not the best pilots, and it's not an unreasonable as to say, I would just like a competent pilot. I don't care if they're green, blue, purple. It makes no difference to me.
And
I just like them to be able to fly a plane, but that's not what they're trying to push.
He retweeted James Lindsay, who was highlighting the diversity initiatives and the bonus structure. It's not just like we want to try and hire more people. It was like you'll get paid more if you hire non-whites. And so Elon said they're sacrificing. He said, would you want to fly in an airline that is sacrificing the skill or sacrificing safety for diversity? And then the media attacked him, claiming, I love this. NBC said Elon Musk claimed this without evidence. And I'm like, what do you mean?
It's their policy.
He literally retweeted James Lindsay's. It's a document from the airline breaking down their diversity initiative.
Yeah, it's I feel like I wake up a lot of times right now and I'm just waiting for Ashton Kutcher to jump out of a cake and be like, you're just being punked. No, I feel like I'm the star of the Truman Show at times. There's no way this is real, right? There's TV cameras following me around in every room that I'm in because they must be, because no rational person could do these things. And yet it's happening.
I feel like that too, and it's I think it's our bias is free speech bias. We've got this bias that the American Constitution is preeminent and will always stand, but I think most of the world just wants it gone. They want us to live like digital serfs and not.
I don't know if
not
most
criticize.
of the world. I think it's but the people who are in charge, because the people that actually hold that power, the World Economic Forum guys, they're never gonna, you can't drive your car, but I'll take my G6. Which will burn more fuel in 30 minutes of air travel than you will in your entire lifetime. But no, it's different for me because I'm doing good and I'm smarter than you and I know more. So you eat bugs, I'll eat steak. You rent your home from me forever, and the second we control the entire rental market, we'll jack up the rents and you'll be serfs for life.
Yeah, that's exactly true. It's not most of the world. Most of the world wants free speech, and they would rise up against their tyrannical governments if they thought that they could win. But it's these power structures that are trying to stomp out free speech. It's really insane.
Well, look, I said something rather intense, I'll call it, last week. When I'm watching these videos of law enforcement officers facilitating crimes against our country on the southern border, particularly, let's go back in time, a month or so, we heard Texas said we're going to make it illegal to cross our borders without, through the proper process. The Biden administration threatened them. I entertain the issue. What happens when Texas state law enforcement confronts federal law enforcement, and federal law enforcement is explicitly breaking the law? First, let's start with a simple question. If a police officer one day decides to rob a bank, do we have someone go and arrest that police officer? And of course, there's no question. Robbing a bank? What if he was told to rob the bank by the chief of police? Yeah, it still doesn't matter. He still went and did it. What we have now is the Biden administration instructing law enforcement. We saw the videos of the bulldozers lifting up the razor wire. They are facilitating illegal activities against this country, violations of the Constitution. Shout out to Josie, who's sitting over here. Article 4, Section 4. They're supposed to protect us from invasion. Instead, they're facilitating it. Now we're entering this. Now the Biden administration is suing Texas over this to try and continue the facilitation of illegal immigration. What happens when a Texas law enforcement officer says, "You, sir, I don't know who you are. I don't care who you are. You are breaking the law and you are under arrest." And that guy says, "I'm a federal agent. Don't you try it."
Well, listen, it's getting to be interesting. I've sort of gone to great lengths, only because I see so many of these guys, FBI agents or retired guys that come up to me and they see what's going on, whether it was to our family or whether it's just in general, and they're like, it's a tarnish on our badge. It's, they saw the Mar-a-Lago FBI raid, and they're like, this is insane, this is ridiculous. I'm like, so I've always made sort of the distinction between the bureaucrat at the top that's just, beholden to the politics and, frankly, all leftists at this point, and the door kickers. But we're getting to the point where it's like, hey guys, if you're just like, well, I'm just doing my job, I'm just doing my job, I'm just doing my job, literally every day someone's rights being violated, the Constitution being violated, the law being violated, when do we stop saying hey man, maybe you don't get a pass forever of just doing your job, maybe more people need to speak out. You saw what happened with the FBI whistleblowers calling out, the entrapment or the Gretchen Whitmer, fake kidnapping, and I'm sure all the stuff around January 6th, the insanity there. Oh, we can't show the video because there's too many of our agents in the crowd. It's like, so they were there, but they didn't do anything to stop it. It's almost like they wanted it to happen. So, when do we say hey, you no longer get the free pass?
Right.
I was just doing my job. Because eventually it doesn't fly.
This is what I said last week, that there are people driving buses. Okay, there's a report that I've highlighted several times from several years ago of two military, they're enlisted, I guess, criminally charged for trafficking illegal aliens. It was a U.S. attorney in Texas saying these guys were transporting migrants for cash. Okay, now you've got these, James O'Keefe did this video. He filmed this bus full of illegal immigrants and they're being trafficked. You've got these big airlines trafficking illegal immigrants. I want to see those people driving those buses in handcuffs.
Yeah.
I want to see a perp walk. We cannot have a country where someone driving this bus, engaging in human trafficking, says, my boss told me to do it, it'll be fine. In this video with James, they swerve in and out of traffic trying to get away from him. They go into off ramps and then back on the highway. And then they call the police to try and get rid of him when they're in fact the ones breaking the law. So what I said, and I'll say it again, is that I hope your dad gets elected. I hope Donald Trump wins in 2024. And I hope, we don't got to be crazy and arrest literally every single person, but if you are on camera, if there's evidence of you facilitating crimes against this country and working with coyotes for human trafficking purposes, I hope you are criminally charged and arrested. And I will do everything within my power as some dude who complains on the internet to say this to anyone of influence. I'll get
Hashtag me too.
I'll say,
I'll be right there with you.
Hey, Don.
And when they come to take us to the gulags, it won't be under our administration, but the second the Democrats take over, because they've shown they're willing to do that, it'll
right.
No, but you're right. We see it happening every day. It's across the board. They're throwing out veterans from public housing to put illegals there. They're taking over hotels, paying the owners of the hotels money. But this is tax. It's not like New York's functioning well, right? It's sort of a disaster, and now we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars doing it. You saw do you see that article? I think it was NBC or CBS News. Texas spent $100 million shipping illegals out of the state. What a bad use of funds. I go, well, if they sent 100,000 immigrants out of the state of Texas, bust them all over the country, got them out of Texas, that's about $1,000 a person. How much would it have cost Texas to keep them there? So, I mean, the article is so gaslighting. It's like, oh, my God, they spent $100 million. I'm like, that could have been $10 billion in the next 2 years just keeping them there.
But,
but they expect you to not believe, beyond the byline or not to see through it, where they've been it's so flagrant these days.
But I'm not gonna defend Texas, Florida, or some of these other states. I know we all laughed when they shipped illegal immigrants like Martha's Vineyard, but when they take illegal immigrants from the border, the Biden administration facilitates this and lets them in, and then Texas pays these companies to ship around the country. That is part of the human trafficking process.
Technically smuggling. It's some of this might be trafficking. Trafficking is when the person doesn't want to be shipped, but if it's of their own volition and they want to be part of it, then they're being smuggled.
Human smuggling.
Yep.
So I think there needs to be, I do not accept that this is some kind of broad, brilliant play for Texas to be like, aha, we'll take those illegal immigrants and send them to other parts of the country.
The problem, while I get what you're saying, at the same time, I think, you see the people in Chicago being like, wait a minute, this is BS. Like, this can't be happening. It's like, well, no. You guys have been yelling about being a sanctuary city and everyone's supposed to be this, but now that you actually deal with it, and when you look at the problem in New York or Chicago, just based on numbers, it's a tiny fraction of what Texas, Arizona, border states actually have to deal with. And all of a sudden, now they're waking up. So, you do need sort of the shot across the bow. It's like, hey, if you want to be a sanctuary city, we've been very clear in Texas that they're not going to be. They don't want to be. And they've been dealing with these problems for many decades, frankly. It's much worse now, but it's really easy to be behind your high fence in Hollywood and talk about how wonderful it is. Those people aren't taking anyone else in, and when they show up in their backyard, all of a sudden it's a problem.
Which is why I can respect it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I still think it's bad. However, that being said, that's why I'm saying the Biden administration is facilitating this, and when Texas tries to do something about it, the Biden administration goes after them. The only real course of action they have seems to be this political play of send them to the sanctuary cities and force these people to recognize what they have supported by voting for Joe Biden and these Democrats. And in fact, because of this, it is a large contributing factor to why, I got to tell you, it's wild to see these videos out of Chicago where you have people in the black community saying they're voting for Donald Trump. Yeah. I've met some of them. And you have the youth vote. There were 3 polls, I believe, so far showing 18 to 34-year-olds leaning Republican for Donald Trump. And that, to me, is shocking.
It is.
But I think when people realize, hey, you're a young person, you can't afford rent, you can't afford work, you're living paycheck to paycheck, your future's been stolen from you, all of these great crises, the COVID lockdowns, all of these things you've seen, and then they tell you $84,000 a year going in the pocket of that guy, and it's coming from your paycheck, they're going to say, I'm going to vote for the other guy.
Yeah. I mean, we had it pretty good under those times. Again, I see it, and I don't pretend to be, I'm the son of a billionaire from New York, and I took my kids... I took him to Alaska. I just remember this one because it stuck out particularly. I took him to Alaska. We were just doing a father-son fishing trip, and we came back and we were at the Anchorage airport. And I got McDonald's for myself, a 14-year-old, and an 11-year-old, and it was like $39. And I was like, oh my God, dude! If I'm feeling sticker shock, what's happening to the rest of the country? I had a mortgage readjust because I had to maintain something for my ex-wife and whatever, a mortgage readjust that I wasn't paying attention for. And just the interest alone, just from the change in interest rate from, a 5-year arm readjusting was like, oh my God. If you took it proportionally to the average cost of a home in America, it could be debilitating, relative to median income.
I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Before I read the next article. I want to ask you, Donald Trump gets elected again in the end of this year. What's the first thing he does? What's the first thing he will do to alleviate the problem of this massive illegal immigration flooding this country?
Well, you shut down the border to stop the continued spread. You get rid of the incentives to, listen, they're literally incentivized to, and by the way, it's a human crisis that most people can't even imagine. I mean, I'm a big outdoorsman, hunter, and stuff like that. I have friends all over South Texas with ranches and stuff. I mean, they're literally finding dead bodies all over the place. Wow. That desert is not an easy one to cross, and the coyotes aren't exactly friendly people, and they don't exactly do the right thing. I mean, it is a crisis on a humanitarian scale that most people, you'll never hear the numbers, you'll never hear about it. And imagine what's reported in America is going to be very different than what doesn't make it in the 1,000 miles it takes to cross Mexico. So you shut that down, you get rid of the incentives, you do the things like remain in Mexico, you hold them accountable for some of these things, and then you do have to start the deportation effort because these millions, you got to do it. And the way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time, man. You got to start, you got to go aggressive.
And this is what they're priming us for with this article from SCNR.com. The reason why I asked. Whoopi Goldberg claims Trump will put people in camps.
They're in camps right now. We see the videos, right?
And
it's cages under Trump. When it's Obama, it's a lovely facility that happens to be a cage, but we won't call it that.
Exactly. And so this is what they're priming us for. We need mass deportation.
Yeah.
We have 10,000 plus people per day illegally entering the country. AOC says just give them papers. That's not gonna solve the problems of the economic crises.
There's more illegals coming into the country on an annual basis than there are American children being born here.
Right. What they're prepping us for with these statements from Whoopi Goldberg is that when Donald Trump does begin the process of, I would just say, typical deportation processes, they are going to produce videos and photos, and they're going to claim he's Hitler, and it's happening, and they're going to use this as propaganda to incite violence.
Yeah, AOC crying at the border wall, of course, but because they've done that. The projection is already happening. Everyone's a fascist except for when they're functioning like fascists. And you've seen it. There's no limit to what the Democrat Party will do to retain power. We've been watching that for the last few years. I mean, it's scary stuff. But yes, they are definitely doing. I'm surprised anyone can actually listen to The View at this point with a straight face.
Who are the people who still do?
I honestly, I don't know. It's sort of interesting. I did when my first book, Triggered, came out, they had me on The View, and it was I think it was like the 5,000th episode of The View, and so they're going a little bit. I actually got after a while, I actually you fight back and whatever. I actually turned the audience, and Whoopi was there, MFing the audience in the commercial break. It was sort of amazing. I wish we could get the footage of that. They'll never allow that to get out there, but it was sort of like they're used to people going on these shows, and they're so desperate to get a little bit of airtime because they're selling their book or whatever bullshit their product they got or whatever it may be. I was there for a book thing. They didn't even ask me about my book. I figured if they're going to have me on there, at least you have the courtesy of that. But it was just an attack session. So then when I sort of went after Whoopi for the, sort of allowing pedophile Roman Polanski and justifying that, and Joy Behar for blackface, and it was, I just sort of had fun because I just said, you know what, if this goes really wrong, I just Googled, like, what are the dumbest things ever said on The View? And it's like, there was a long list, but there was some pretty obvious ones. And, they lost their whole audience, but they still have this sort of, they must have some sort of capture, probably, white suburban virtue signaling housewives that they're able to manipulate with their nonsense because, they're correcting themselves all the time, but, it doesn't matter. They get the hit out there. The media picks it up. It's pushed very effectively through social media as though it's the gospel as opposed to nonsense. So, there's no question that's what they're doing.
Wasn't it Kelly Osbourne that came out and said on The View specifically that we need all these immigrants here because they're going to be cleaning our toilet?
Yeah, and I quote, Donald Trump, who's going to scrub your toilet if they're not here? And everyone else was like, whoa. She's like, no, this is what I mean. But that's the problem. They don't get it.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that there's value to building a wall now again?
Listen,
a big graphene
Joe
wall.
Biden is selling the wall off.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
We need a nice, strong
we paid
wall.
for it. We then sell off the components rather than taking, literally, they could have just completed it in the areas that it mattered. I mean, it was clearly effective. You saw the numbers, but they didn't want to complete it. So instead, they paid for the material. Now they're selling off the remaining materials so that you have to buy it again if and when someone else ever takes office. Like, there's literally no... It's like Wuhan lab leak theory. Like, of course it came from the lab. Like, of course this is intentional from them. Of course they want unfettered access to people who are going to be dependent and who will ultimately vote Democrat. Like, they offer nothing else if you're not a dependent at this point.
I get nervous about the deportation stuff because logically it makes sense, but realistically, I see the horror of like people with their cell phones recording their mother screaming as she's being pulled out of her living room. And then like every day that kind of stuff on social media getting played on NBC. And like,
now imagine this. Now imagine a video of a woman crying and screaming as she's being pulled from a bank vault carrying a bunch of cash.
Yeah.
We don't look at that crime being committed and go, oh, that poor woman.
Or the seventh
but
time
Democrats
deported
do.
guy that raped women with reckless abandon, or drove drunk for the 5th time in the United States and killed someone's son, or smuggling fentanyl across the border time and time again, killing hundreds of thousands of Americans.
There's a video of a man being arrested in the subway, and the cops are roughing him up, not really hitting him or anything, but they're like grabbing his arm, they're pulling it, and he's resisting. And there's all these comments on Twitter, they're like, why are the cops doing this? This man, he didn't even do anything. He was fighting cops.
No.
He jumped the turnstile. They said, stop, we're going to give you a ticket. He fought with the cops. They fought back and arrested him. Yes, that's how you enforce laws.
That's victim crime. This is victimless crime, which is part of what makes deportation challenging. Like these,
it's not victimless.
Well,
it is not victimless.
They're technically attacking everyone by displacing us, but realistically,
you have E-Verify. You make it. You create incentives where it's harder for them to do that. Maybe they, honestly, you'd probably have a lot of people self-deporting because if they're not able to take advantage of the systems, if we're not just abjectly writing them checks and giving them phones and telling them, hey, here's a phone, here's a couple $1,000 a month, and why don't you see us in 2037 for your court date? There are things you can do that don't make it so simple where the American taxpayer isn't footing the bill in perpetuity.
You've got these people hiring human traffickers, actual human traffickers.
Or smugglers.
Not smugglers, traffickers.
Yeah.
There are traffickers who kidnap kids, who rape them, drag them across the border, and these are the same people that the other illegal immigrants will go to and pay.
Yeah.
And so we hear these horrifying stories that these smugglers, let's say the lighter version of the coyotes, they overwhelmingly rape young girls as they do this. It's not a victimless crime. This should not be allowed to continue. Now,
like 40%.
It's an insane number.
It's not like, there's occasionally it happens. And I know they went after my father a lot when he said it, but that's the reality. I had Tom Homan, a former head of ICE, on my Triggered podcast like 2 weeks ago, and he's talking about, the stories that these guys could tell. If you could show those videos, if you could show those stories to the American public, you'd be building a wall in about 3 seconds if people understood the reality of what's actually going on down there.
I've done some reporting on the ground of the refugee crisis that was spurred on by a lot of the caravans that ended up in Tijuana. And there was a lot of problems, not just when it came to sanitation, not just when it came to a lot of the diseases and viruses that were being spread everywhere, but specifically with assaults on women and children, specifically to the point where they needed an entire other area to house people and to put people in because of the huge amounts of violations that were happening against women, that were happening against children. And when you look at a large number of the people coming through, it's fighting age males. It's males that, of course, are in the peak of their age. They're coming here to this country, and this is something that sadly we don't hear talked about at all because there's a big censorship effort trying to deny us this reality. But a lot of these people are lied to. They're told, hey, we're going to give you all this stuff. There's all these opportunities. Just come on here. Everything's going to be amazing and great for you. And for a lot of them, it's not. And it's not just hurting Americans, but it's also hurting them as well. As, of course, a lot of multinational corporations also take advantage of them. They put them in, of course, laborious situations where they don't have to pay them like they would an American. And they're the ones also being taken advantage of. And from a humanitarian perspective, we have to understand here, I understand what Ian is trying to convey, but I think just stopping the incentivizing of this larger program from moving forward, just stop funneling it, stop giving it money, that would solve a lot of the problems. Go after the corporations hiring these people, go after all these incentives, and then you won't need to deport people. People won't leave because the people will naturally leave.
But Donald Trump did this.
Yeah. Like, by the way,
famously went after several meat processing plants. We've talked about it quite a bit.
We've seen this done. It's not, and that's sort of the thing about my father running right now, right? Like, he did all of the things he said he was, like, we know we can do this. Them pretending like, oh, it's impossible. We just can't do it. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we had these numbers down. I mean, the amount of, you talk about the fighting age males, but they're showing up with young girls that clearly aren't their children, and they won't do the DNA tests anymore because it doesn't matter, and they're just like, well, we just got to push it through. It's too much to handle. I mean, we are enabling a humanitarian crisis of epic proportions, and those same Hollywood elites are just fine with that. Maybe, listen, I guess they're all on the Epstein tape, so they're probably, let the attention go elsewhere.
You have a 27-year-old male with a 10-year-old girl cross the border, and the Trump administration said, who is that young girl? Because we know the coyotes are trafficking and raping young girls. And then the Democrats go, oh, no, they're separating the daughter from her father. It's like, that's some guy with some kid who is trafficking them. And we know that there's a large amount of rape going on. We need to figure out if these are victims being trafficked. But these liberals, these Democrats, the corporate press, they don't care.
Would you guys support military intervention in Mexico?
What does that mean?
Dropping bombs, targeted assassinations, like total just
if you were going after the
proportionally, yes.
Yeah, cartels, like, I mean,
in proportional conflict.
Is the cartel not an enemy combatant of the United States? Are they not a clear and present danger?
But we have to clarify that. I think military conflict in any country can be justified. It just depends on the context. If, like, Mexico started ritualistically just executing anybody who was near the border, even American citizens, yes, absolutely. If cartels were kidnapping American citizens and then killing them, mark in reprisal. In fact, the Mexican government should be working with us to stop that stuff. And if they don't, then we go after them. For the time being, I don't know if I know enough about the current conflict with the cartels that justifies bombings and assassinations.
Yeah,
there's also a lot of links to the CIA and intel agencies that helped a lot of cartels out and work with the cartels and are participating in larger drug trades that, of course, are bringing over the fentanyl here into the United States as well. As, of course, they have a history of bringing in crack cocaine and introducing it to, of course, the local populations here as well. So I don't think that's going to happen, Ian, mainly because there's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, it's on the border, which has its own risk. You don't want, I mean, I don't think anyone in America wants to be fighting on the border right now, and that could open that up. So you think that they're prioritizing economics over human life, the CIA and whoever's doing
that? I don't think it's economics for the American public, though. I think it's economics for their own war chests and coffers. I mean, that's probably historically far more accurate than anything that would be positive for American economics. But man, it's hard. I got a call from a buddy this week. He had some friends, and they were in a hunting camp in Sonora, in Mexico, across the border, and cartels grabbed a couple guys, shot a bunch of the guys they were with, and I guess They left some of the Americans, but they are actively doing this. By the way, and they're also taking over all of the law enforcement. They're more heavily armed and weaponized than a lot of the Mexican military. I mean, this is a war zone.
I think, as Luke is pointing out with the intel agencies, I think there's more to it than we realize.
100%.
That these cartels are working with some level of, the U.S. government.
Yeah. But I think that's far more of a threat to the United States than anything going on in the Ukraine right now. I think it's far more relevant to our well-being than anything going on there. But, we're fine sending $150 billion to them without accountability or,
Well, there's a lot of documented cases, especially with Operation Fast and Furious, especially with the Obama administration, especially with even U.S. Special Forces creating essentially one of the fiercest cartels in all of Mexico as well. So the history's there, and this is the public stuff that we know about. What don't we know about? As, of course, almost every step of the way here, we see direct government intervention. You could go all the way back to Iran-Contra. That was another major scandal that the intel agencies were a part of that they were never held responsible for. The guy in charge of it got a spot on Fox News for some freaking reason. And when we don't have accountability for these intel agencies, they're going to continue to do what they did before. So is there a way to get any kind of accountability here from them? That's a question that I think a lot of people have on their minds, especially with how egregiously they've been overacting against, your dad.
Listen, I think you got to try. And I think that I think now that there were some nice things about coming in as an outsider, but I think there were also some disadvantages, right? Who do you actually trust? The Plum Book, which is, the president's sort of 4,000 employees, they put into those positions. I don't know 4,000 people. You're going to find 4,000 people that are actually going to believe in your movement in this, or, they showed you 3 tweets in the 2 weeks in the hiring process, and, we're pretty for it. Now he understands who the snakes are, who the bad people are, and I think that's what scares him more. I think that's why you have sort of the retaliation going so much more aggressively at him, because he is the only threat to their hegemony there. You've seen Nikki Haley. It's like, she was created in a laboratory, by the neocons. It's like the perfect, never-ending war Republican. It's like Liz Cheney.
What do you guys think about Vivek?
Honestly, I like a lot of what he's saying. I do. I've been saying that fairly publicly for quite some time. I say it on my podcast a lot. I guess, and I'd like to get to know him. I don't actually know him, but I'd like to get to know him. I agree with a lot of what he's saying. On the corollary to that, I have a lot of people, when I'm just doing my live stream or whatever, but I don't trust him. I was like, well, I understand that too, because, I don't know where he was in 16, 18, 20, 22. I believe he's certainly, of the other people other than my father on that stage, he's the smartest of them by far. So I also believe he's smart enough to tell you what you want to hear if you're the conservative base voter. But, I kind of want to believe, so maybe it takes some time. I think he's developing. I've always bitched, we have no bench.
Right.
After Donald Trump, who's the guy, that before the primary, I was 2 or 3 with DeSantis. I'm but I was a real estate guy until I just started yelling because no one else is fighting, so I might as well do it. We don't have that bench of guys that are going to be rock stars. I think there's some guys coming along, like J.D. Vance. There's other guys that are now coming out, but I said it today, John Fetterman is more based than 3/4 of the United States Senate, with what he's saying these days. And I'm meaning on the Republican side. And how does that happen? So we need more of a base. We need more people who are willing to sort of fight for that America First movement. And, my father gets that now, but, I want to believe. I want to believe that he can get there. I don't know enough yet.
So Donald Trump said that he already picked his VP candidate already. We also have Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk saying that they want to see Vivek Ramaswamy as the vice president for Donald Trump. What do you think are the chances of that possibly happening, and who would you like to see as a VP?
Listen, I've been pretty vocal. I'd love to see Tucker. I think that would. By the way, if only to watch the Tucker Carlson Kamala Harris vice presidential debate. I think. By the way, make no mistake. I think he'd be awesome across the board. But that would sort of just be the icing on the cake.
I think he should take Vivek. I think Vivek's like a bulletproof vest, because if you let Vivek into the presidency, he's going to upend the power structure and he'll do it rapidly.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys like that, and I think there's a lot of positions that you could put disruptors like that in to go break these things up at the CIA. You don't just have the guy that's going, okay, fine, Obama did the thing he did probably best was get these people that were in otherwise appointed positions entrenched in these sort of unfireable roles. They're like tenure at Harvard. Like, well, you got tenure, so you can't, you can be totally incompetent. And they totally politicize and weaponize these institutions. And so you need someone who has the balls, frankly, to be able to go in there and break that up. And I think we understand that now. And coming in, with 4 years of experience, understanding who those guys are. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned John Ratcliffe earlier talking about those things. I mean, he'd be, a guy that could be great at some of these things. I think that's the most important thing we can actually do to save the republic.
I think Vivek knows that he's the runner-up. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I think Vivek's absolutely fantastic. And I think you make a great point about needing a bench. He brought this up yesterday. We did this town hall with him, and he was basically saying, come next year, we should not be surprised at what they are willing to do to stop Donald Trump. And if they succeed, it would be a mistake if we look back and said we should have done something different. I think his view is basically, I'm going to put it more bluntly than he would. He is the safety net in the event that they do the most egregious. They're already doing it with the criminal trials, the fraud trial. But I think Vivek's view is he genuinely thinks that they're going to maliciously and nefariously in some way remove your dad from this race. And so he's going to be waiting as a safety net in case.
How far do you think they could go here? They're going
I don't think there's any limitations. I mean, they've shown that, right? I mean, again, the disparate treatment of conservatives or people who are America first. Look at J6ers versus Summer of Love rioters. I mean, you're seeing people who peacefully, they're literally walking through the velvet ropes taking selfies. It's like, well, that person got 7 years, and you burn down a Target and murder a few people. It's like, well, that's different. That's for social justice. It's
it's mostly peaceful.
We're going to make you a hero. Yeah, no, it's mostly peaceful while the building's burning in the background. It's, we've seen there's no limit to that. The people who've been screaming about fascism, are jailing their political opponents. They're trying to take out, the leader of the opposition party. I mean, they're actually being fascists in real life. I mean, that shouldn't be lost on anyone.
It's fascinating in this hearing on presidential immunity. The Democrats and the corporate press latch onto the argument that if a president were to order the assassination of his political rival, he could not be prosecuted unless he was impeached and convicted first. So long as it was an official duty. At the same time, they're arguing, like, how dare you insinuate and go after your political rival in such a criminal way? And it's like, this trial is literally that. The fact that Donald Trump is on trial is because the president is attacking his political rival and making it's the brilliant projection manifest.
But think about the
make your rival defend himself when you're the one actually attacking your rival.
Well, their entire thing is projection. But I mean, imagine Donald Trump gets back in. Do we go back and try Obama for murder because he droned American citizens in the Middle East?
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, but that's the precedent they're setting. So, I mean, there comes a point like, hey, I'd love nothing more than to not have to have those conversations, right? But we are playing T-ball on our side while the other side is playing fast pitch hardball. You can't win or, get to a point where you actually have a chance unless you start playing the game that they are. They hated Trump because he was more aggressive. He said the quiet parts out loud. He actually followed through. He didn't just sort of tell the people, in a nice room in Iowa what they wanted to hear. And then, well, we go back to D.C. It's like, I was just kidding. That's different. That's what we've seen from, all of the other candidates, thus far. And again, maybe Vivek is the exception to that.
I feel like
he didn't come from that machine.
There might be other ways to win in a game where they're playing fast pitch and you've been practicing T-ball. Is that like you buy the company that owns the game, or you find out some outside interference pattern that can make it more of a victory for everybody involved?
Well, we're starting to. You know what that outside interference pattern is? The insanity of their actions. Right, like I've been sort of interested. I'm watching the Bill Ackman thing sort of unfold.
Amazing
with Harvard, right? But like people are like, well, he finally did that. I go, but you know what? It wasn't finally now. I was talking with this Josie earlier. I was like, no, when I first sort of got on his, where he came on my radar beyond, sort of being a New York hedge fund billionaire. Maybe there's some similar circles there, but like was during the Kyle Rittenhouse stuff. And I don't know if you remember, but like his first real sort of long form tweet that became political was he's like, I'm watching the Kyle Rittenhouse trial with my wife here, and I'm hearing the testimony, and I'm seeing the alleged, and I was like, I was told that this guy's a white supremacist who killed a bunch of innocent African Americans, and the fact set that was laid out very succinctly and very stringently by the mainstream media does not align with anything that I'm actually seeing in this case. And he goes, it reminds me of business, where I've been a big player for 40 years, half a century, whatever it is, and I'd read the Wall Street Journal, and I'm either a player or I know the players that they're talking about. I know the deals intimately. I'm a subject matter expert, and I laugh at how ridiculous the reporting is. But then I turn the page and I read another article about something that I'm not a subject matter expert, and I just assume it's correct. Whereas I should be assuming it's not. And he goes, all this time it was crazy. And I just remember him then go, he goes, I just got a call from the New York Times asking if my Twitter account was hacked. And he was just literally objectively stating the facts. And so there are people, and this was a Bolshevik. I mean, major billionaire, Democrat, donor, yada, 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 who's like, it's just not lining up. And now you see what happened with Harvard, and then they went after his wife. Maybe, Neri Oxman could be like the Helen of Troy for like facts and reality if it's just exposing this. You get 10 other guys like him finally having the balls to actually do it, because they're going to try to destroy him, and there's a consequence to that. But you get enough people, maybe there is some chance that we wake up to that so much of what we've been told and so much of what we've read is just all a lie, designed intended to manipulate.
It's called the Gelman amnesia effect, where you read the news and they say, Donald Trump does backflip, and you're like, wow, I didn't realize he could do that. Then you turn the page and you're a plumber, and it's like, plumbing tube gets put backwards, up, down, and you're like, wait, that makes no sense. This is fake news.
Yeah. Donald Trump tried stealing the beast. He was able to subvert 2 heavily armed young Secret Service agents. I was like, I don't know if he did that. I'd like it more.
And the best part was they claimed he went through, he phase shifted with his superpowers by vibrating like the Flash through the barricade between the driver and the...
Like, I've been in the beast. I've been in it. Like, that ain't happening. And like, my father's a vibrant and agile young man, but he's probably not taking out 2 Secret Service guys. But that was the gospel. That happened. Cassidy Hutchinson, she testified at the January 6th committee that was what happened. Now, the guys that were actually in the car say, no, that didn't happen. That was ridiculous. But the second they knew that was happening, they weren't going to allow that testimony, because the testimony, though fact, would refute the narrative. The narrative they weaponized so effectively. When it comes out 2 years later, it doesn't matter. We got what we wanted. We weaponized it fully.
Let's talk about...
what was the Harvard
Let's
thing?
talk about Fetterman.
You want to move on to
yeah, I want to talk about Fetterman.
Okay.
The Harvard thing was all the stuff with, Claudine Gay and the...
plagiarism scandal.
The plagiarism scandal and DEI, as well as, by the way, just being sort of, let's just call it laissez-faire on the actions of students, perpetuating Hamas, things that would not have...
So
let's we'll jump to the story from Fox News. This is Fetterman blasts South Africa genocide case against Israel amid unrest, crime. Sit this one out. So the interesting thing is, he's maybe because his brain is broken, he said when you now look at what's going on in South Africa, now they should sit this one out. And everyone immediately said, in reference to genocide, is he talking about what's going on with the farmers? And, of course, there are people who have come up and be like, no, he's talking about apartheid. No, that's not even true. Yeah. I don't know what he thought he was talking about, but his own statement now is he was talking about Sudan, apparently.
Well, I think they're trying to cover up. I think he actually meant, because he said some pretty, like I said, he's more based than a lot of the Republican senators right now. I mean, he was all for, what was it, U.S. Steel. He came out in favor of, you can't get rid of that. You can't sell it to, I guess it was the Japanese. He came out. He's been very pro-Israel. He's frankly actually mocked a lot of the Palestinian, protesters that started going into his office and around that. He's come out publicly as a Democrat senator who, a year ago, it was pretty darn woke, said, like, of course we have to shut down the border. What's going on there is absolutely insane. Like, of course, So it doesn't take a leap based on the actions of even the last few months to say, he was probably talking about the white genocide of farmers, which, again, if it's happening to white farmers in South Africa, I guess that's fine according to the mainstream media today, but it's actually happening and it's a real problem. And if we had actual journalists rather than sort of DEI/woke regime propagandists, they'd actually be writing stories about it.
Absolutely, it's fascinating to see his kind of development, since the poor guy could barely speak sometimes.
It's almost like the treatment process from the brain aneurysm actually was like, now he's actually getting better, and he's not espousing the insane policies of the left.
That might be the way how you deal with the woke mind virus, but I find him fascinating. Ever since he came on the political stage, I always said I want to see him as the VP for Biden. I literally created BidenFetterman.com as a way to spur on this idea, and the way that things are kind of shaping up, the way that he's being kind of prompted up there, it could happen. And
no, but now the left is going after him because he's saying things that, at times make sense. And again, I'm a guy that I was crapped on by the mainstream media over and over again because, when he was running that campaign and when he became I'm like, there were times he was getting on a stage, he forgets where he is, he couldn't form a complete sentence, but he'd keep going, and it was clearly like an episode, and I sort of went after it, and people called me an ableist. That's apparently someone who discriminates against those with disabilities. And I was like, well, I just don't think it's an unreasonable expectation, even in, this was 2023 America, to expect a United States senator who's making trillion-dollar decisions and or could be a deciding vote in a 50-50 Senate to send our children to war to be able to have basic cognitive function.
Yeah, if he was a dude at a restaurant at another table and you made
you're the
fun of him,
checkout guy at a place. I love that you're gainfully employed. I think that's awesome. I'll give you a high five and respect it. Like, if you're making trillion-dollar decisions, if you're making life or death decisions, we should not be like, how dare you discriminate against. It's like, in no reasonable society in history now or in the future would it not be okay to be like, hey man, we just need a reasonable level of cognitive function to sit there.
I feel like that with age. It's not age, though, because Biden and Don are like similar ages, but it's mental cognizance. And we got all these old people, and I don't want to be ageist. I really don't, because some people are 70, even 80, and they're brilliant, clear thinkers. But there's something, too. Like, we gotta talk about
But not everyone ages the same. By the way, listen, you're not allowed to talk about looks anymore, but it's the same thing. You see people, and there's guys. I'm 46. There's guys I graduated college with. I'm embarrassed to tell people we went to school together because I was like, I can't look like that. If I look like that, you age differently. The same thing happens with cognitive decline. God willing, we all go there longer. But I know guys in their 60s that are a mess. I know guys in their 90s that would run circles around the average 20 or 30-year-old. You see it a lot in business. Like, some of these guys, they peak in their 60s and 70s business-wise, and later. Because they've been able to sort of learn and grow and get to a point. And then you see, Joe Biden. I mean, my father had a sort of an interesting one. He used to tell me this story, early. But he was having, conversations with Ted Kennedy back in the day. Like, Joe Biden was always known as the stupidest person in the United States Senate. Like, throughout his entire tenure there. That's not, disputed. That's just Senate understanding. Now, he's also had 2 major brain aneurysms. I wrote about this in my book, Liberal Privilege. He's had things that if you asked, let's call it all the same telepsychologists that said, if my father grabbed a railing walking down a slippery ramp, he must be in the later stages of cognitive decline. If you ask those same people honestly, and they had even a modicum of intellectual honesty, no one could go through 2 brain aneurysms and be 100% fine. Almost statistically impossible.
Well, it depends on which version of Biden we're talking about here, as of course a lot of people
but watch a video of him
yes.
10 years ago. Watch a video of him even as VP. It's it's a different voice. It's a different speed. Say what you want. There's a decline. It ain't the same.
Yeah, I remember talking to him a couple years ago, specifically when it came to Pakistani ISI funding and meetings that he had right before 2001. And he was sharp. He was quick. He answered right back. He was taking questions from people left and right. This was just a few years ago. Now, the poor guy, if it's even him, according to some people who are saying, hey, he's probably replaced by some kind of other impersonator. That's also possible too. But a lot of world leaders have a lot of impersonators. If you're dealing with someone who can't walk around or can't hold their bowels, why wouldn't you use the impersonator, right? I mean,
but it's like Shane Gillis, right? The Roomba sort of analogy.
Exactly.
Shane Gillis, and it's perfect. He's on a stage. I do a lot of public speaking. I get up on a stage, I talk, I walk off the way I can. I mean, he gets lost. I got canceled on social because I said, well, he's clearly lost. No. He was shaking hands with someone in the audience. I was like, but the audience was there, and he's pointing 180 degrees from he was clearly lost. Whatever they jacked him up with to give the appearance of, even temporary lucidity had worn off,
and he's lost. But it's not like it happened once and you forgive. It happens every time you see him speak. There's a reason, he had nothing on the schedule today, but his wife was on ABC News talking about his great level of energy. He's taken 40% of his time on vacation as president. Like, there comes a point in time you have to call bullshit.
But
right?
that's why they like him, because he's the perfect puppet.
There's a video right
100%.
now of Trump Sr. walking out onto stage for the town hall, and he walks up, stops, looks to his left, walks a little bit, looks at somebody, and they're like, look, he got lost. And I was like, I saw this claim first, a tweet saying Donald Trump getting lost on the stage says so much, and I was like, oh, he got lost? I was like, I'd like to see this. And then I watched the video, I'm like, where in this video does he get lost?
Yeah, he made eye contact with someone, was like, hey, how you doing?
Right, and then he starts walking.
Joe
so
Biden's doing
desperate.
like an air handshake to the curtain for 7 or 8 seconds.
Yeah.
Remember when he started speaking backwards? So
Yeah.
he was on stage, and he was looking at the curtains talking, and everyone's like,
Well, how many
You can
times
look
have
at
we
the
seen the headline? He walked off the stage before the ceremony was finished. Like he was, doing something and giving a ceremony, and he shakes hands and then just walks away through the middle of the crowd. And they're like, no, over here. How many times have we seen the video of him, trying to be guided into the Oval Office by the Secret Service because he walks past the entrance of the office he's occupied for the last 3 years?
I have one word. Treat it in that shot under pressure.
Yo, this is something where people make the mistake of comparing one president to another president. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. That dude is sharp. His mind is healthy and clear. Biden and Fetterman we can talk about in a little bubble if we want to. What do we do when our representatives get messed up in the head? You're supposed to do something about it.
But they don't. They won't, because the reality is this: the Democrats. Listen, I honestly, whoever's actually in charge of the Biden administration, whether it's Susan Rice or the Obamas or whatever, he's the perfect fall guy because he's actually doing all the things Obama would have loved to have done: open borders, pushing the trans crap, gender surgeries for 3-year-olds that can't make other decisions in their life. But sure, you can make that life-altering decision, because they wouldn't be willing to destroy their reputation. They wouldn't put that face in front of the American public. They're happy to throw him under the bus because he'll sign an, he's like Ron Burgundy.
But
put it on the teleprompter. He'll say it and it's the gospel. He'll sign it if you stick it in front of him.
But they could have him do anything in terms of foreign policy and war and always just use him as a scapegoat.
So 100%. He's the fall guy. So he's actually, for the radical Democrat agenda, been quite effective because they can actually do the things that the American public wouldn't let them get away with.
Do you think it's Democrat? Because I think of it as like a global monetary.
Well, I sort of look at the Democrat and a lot of that sort of World Economic Forum globalist. Those ideologies are sort of
one and the same.
They're not
to
one
be
and the
fair.
same, but they're blending significantly.
And Vivek's view on this is Nikki Haley is their inside job strategy. If they can't defeat Donald Trump at the polls in the general, they'll try and beat him in the primary with Nikki Hillary.
Yeah, well, that's why I said when people were like, "Oh, Nikki Haley should be VP," I was like, "Can you imagine I don't know if I can curse this stage in the game, but the
cursing.
Yeah, I guess the MF-ery that would be going on from her team trying to subvert everything that he did from every moment. Like it's like, so I don't,
What is it? Was it?
Well, the CIA
Yeah, someone puts it out there.
You need
because
a food tester.
Yeah, the CIA would get their heart
100%.
attack gun out right away.
Yeah.
And then they would
That's
install
why,
Nikki.
yeah, with a Vivek, or people joke like, "Hey, Don, you should run as VP because then no one's assassinating your father." I go, "That's wait a second," because but. Yeah, I mean, it would be a disaster. So, yeah, there's no question. There's plenty of, and by the way, like I said, we're talking about, half of the Republicans in the United States Senate. I mean, they're not all that different from the Democrats. Nikki Haley is, Hillary Clinton dressed up as a conservative for Halloween. Like, give me a break. Like, he wants to be in every war imaginable, stooge of big corporate. Like, it's lunacy at this point.
Do you think that we can pull the United States back from being a military government? Like, I feel like after World War II, we basically reformed our government to become full militaristic.
Well, they're ignoring the president of the United States, whether it's Joe Biden and not letting him know about Lloyd Austin, whether it's a moron like Milley, well, we're just not going to listen to what the president says, or we'll slow play it. So he has to ask us 3 times, and we're just trying to hope to run out the clock until something else happens, or we create a scenario. Well, if we do this, American troops are going to die. Well, how do you do that then? You must, So there's no question that those unelected leaders have been trying to subvert the will of the people for quite some time. I think maybe the best thing that Donald Trump ever did, beyond, it's not even policy, was just exposed that. The Trump derangement syndrome was so insane that people were like, wait a minute, like this, but it's actually going on. Like, he brought that to a light. There's no doubt that it was probably going on way before Trump. It's probably been going on as long as time. But at least he brought it to the light for the average person to finally get it. The extreme nature, the overcorrection of the pendulum swinging and the way they're handling things now is getting people who would otherwise, again, be politically agnostic or just busy trying to feed their families and not paying attention to actually listen. The lunacy of the mainstream media pushing people to watch, guys like us right now doing this, as opposed to taking it from the Pentagon implanted stooge at NBC News. It's making a difference, and I think it's waking people up. We just I hope we can. I hope they don't get to run out the clock.
Yeah, we got to create a vision of what to do next.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the campaign.
Yeah, can we appoint Alex Jones as the head of the CIA?
Well, I talked about this on my show. There's I have a list of people that I want to put in positions, even for a temporary time, just so they give you the guy that you want. They go, Alex Jones as press secretary for just 2 weeks, just to the shot across the bow to these guys. But the reality. Say what you want. Alex Jones, I'm not saying he's got everything right. He's definitely got a couple things wrong, but he's been more right than anyone in the mainstream media over the last 15 years. Yeah. No, it's not even close. And yet they have credibility. The experts. I always did this with when my dad was dealing with North Korea and actually went there and had a relationship. And it's just so you have a relationship, so if crap ever hits the fan, you can actually pick up the phone. Well, he's doing it all wrong. He's doing it all. Well, why? Well, I know because I've been leading the delegation for North Korea. It's well, have you ever met with them? No, I can't do that. I mean, so you've been leading the delegation for 30 or 40 years, but you've never actually met, so you don't actually know, and yet you're an expert. We should be revoking expert status across the board when you have a generational failure. But that's not how D.C. works.
And Donald Trump made a lot of progress with North Korea that was very impressive, but then sadly John Bolton kind of came in and said that they were following the Libyan model and kind of literally nuked that larger peace deal that Donald Trump could have had if it wasn't for John Bolton.
And I think he gets it done again. I think he was on, he'd say, I had a good relationship with him. That doesn't mean he doesn't understand this is not a good person. It isn't a dictator. Same with Putin. But what you're supposed to tell Putin to go F himself, embarrass him on a world stage. And so when something actually does happen and you do need to make that phone call, you have no it's because the experts have never actually negotiated anything real.
What do you think have been some of the biggest learning lessons
real quick,
since the last time?
Before that question, I'm going to do something I've never done on the show before. I'm going to leave. I'm actually feeling really, really sick, but we've got some awesome friends. I don't know if Phil or Josie or somebody wants to jump in, take my seat.
Why don't you guys both come up for a minute?
I'm feeling real sick.
I'm going to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I know. We try. I tried. I got the drink because I just got punched in the gut.
Hey, Phil, you want to sit in for 10 minutes or so? I'm going to go to the bathroom and listen to you guys, and then I'll come back up later in the show.
Hey?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're going to continue the conversation.
But in the issue of full transparency, I'm like,
I hope I didn't piss you off so bad. Did I disgust you to the point where...
I'm enjoying it. Right. I'm actually, I resisted for the past 15, 20 minutes. I went up to go to the bathroom. I came back. I'm like, I can't.
Try to lay down, try to feel better.
Yeah,
definitely go take care of yourself. We still have super chats that we're going to be getting into in about 13 minutes. But to kind of continue the conversation, a lot of people still have a lot of questions, specifically when it comes to, the military-industrial complex or big pharma. What would you say has been some of the biggest learning lessons for everyone around you, specifically when it comes to the larger realizations of just how dirty everything is in Washington, D.C.? And what was some of the biggest things that you've been personally awoken to just how rotten and bad it is?
I was talking about this actually with Josie earlier, so I hate to be repetitive, but we're going to be because it's really, for me, you wanted, as a patriotic American, you wanted to believe so many of the things that you sort of, World War II generation nostalgia of America, and it's but now, I went through, let's call it the opposite of Hunter Biden, right? I was guilty of treason, a crime punishable by death, according to the head of the intel committees, and they're up there every day, and the walls are closing in, and I did 50 hours of testimony for my life, and they altered my emails. That was then proven. But each time you realize, oh my God, there doesn't actually have to be any truth to any of the things that they're saying. They can get away with this. So, it was interesting. Even as it happened, I use sort of the General Flynn example a lot. I was friends with him on the campaign. I got to know him really well. I traveled with him all over the country. I thought he was a patriotic American. They started going after him. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound right, but it's the CIA. It's the FBI. They got to be doing, they must know something I don't know and must be, so I didn't come out against them, but I sat back on the sidelines because I was like, well, they must know more than me. Turns out it's all bullshit. They don't have to know anything. They didn't. They just create whatever they want. So I think nostalgia is sort of not the right word, but sort of that, I guess maybe nostalgia for an Americana that we want to exist does not actually exist. There are people in these positions that are evil, depraved, and many of them are frankly incompetent. Fauci was never the best doctor. He was probably never even a good doctor. He was the best MFer. If someone got in his way, he stabbed them in the back. He was the best at probably manipulating the press. He was the best at creating obstruction for those who were probably creating actual real science or doing really good. The guy survived despite being wrong about everything in the world since the 1980s, including AIDS. That's like the predominant makeup of this sort of Washington, D.C. Elite and the establishment, and the people who've been there for their lives. They were probably never the best at anything except being that MFer that will do whatever it can to maintain and keep power. And that was a scary notion. But I think now that you know that, now that you know the players, you got to do the best you can to actually combat that. But you also have to have the stomach to actually do that.
A lot of people have questions about Dr. Fauci, specifically with his latest testimony that he was giving to Congress. He was pleading the fifth a lot. But he also admitted to essentially stamping the approval for something that was extremely dangerous, extremely reckless, that he allegedly didn't even read himself when it came to, of course, sending off Peter Daszak, the CIA, EcoHealth Alliance, over to the Wuhan Institute to work on a particular sickness that actually accidentally somehow also spread in that same city. Will there be any kind of justice for Anthony Fauci for all the horrible things that he did?
Well, I think that probably has to come through Congress. So you need people to have the balls there to actually do that. I mean, if we're actually going to be, constitutional about it. But I think there has to be. I mean, he lied. I mean, he pled the fifth on everything. He doesn't remember anything of something that happened over the last 5 years, let's call it. But, he writes a book about all the great things over the 20 years prior to that doesn't seem to have any lapses in memory there. I don't buy that. I don't think anyone else buys that. But they also, our mainstream media, big tech, they made him a deity. I think I used the Wuhan sort of lab example, earlier in the show. But I was getting canceled because I was like, well, of course it came from the lab. What are you talking about? You're telling me it came from 7 feet outside of the lab at some wet market, as opposed to the lab that studies the exact virus in question. But if you were in medicine, if you had tenure at a university, you were canceled. If you were a research person and you said literally the 100% most plausible answer, you lost your grant money. Again, that's where a guy like a Fauci was, he'd wield that power and that money with an iron fist. So, you got to do something about it. I think Rand Paul did a great job sort of calling some of that stuff out. But he was infallible, according to the media, despite being wrong about everything. But also at the time, it's hard to go against that. Because, they would have impeached my father in 30 seconds if he said, wait a second, this is, So, I think as brutal as some of that was, I do hope that, people's eyes are opened to, just how malicious and just how bad it actually is. And I think that's an important first step. In actually taking care of the problem.
Yeah, I think a lot of Americans have been hurt. I think a lot of Americans want justice. But I think one of the issues that also is kind of a concern is yesterday during our town hall, we had a member of the U.S. military come up and ask the first question. He was a gentleman called Drew. Drew was actually a victim of Operation Warp Speed. This is sort of a controversial issue, especially now as there's a lot of questions with Donald Trump's kind of policies and belief systems when it comes to what transpired and happened. For individuals like Drew out there, and for the many people who aren't kind of accounted for and kind of been hurt by this larger operation, is there any kind of recourse or justice that could potentially happen for them?
I think there I mean, you saw with the military firings and trying to get those people to back pay and the other stuff. That was never about forcing that on those people. People could make their own decisions, and you try to do that right. I think at the time it would have been very difficult to go up against, to take on fascism. I think you would have been impeached in about 3 seconds if you're going to be realistic about what was going on in that. I think the way the bureaucracies weaponized a lot of that was absolutely disgusting. And I think there does need to be accountability for that. There do need to be, I don't want to use the word reparations, but, and it was strange. It seemed to be targeted against all the people that were probably more conservative leaning in the military. It was the operators, it was the pilots, it was the this. It felt very much to me like, a very targeted purge of those people who probably had the most training, but also probably lean more conservative within the military.
Yeah, I think a lot of people also have some kind of significant concerns, especially, let's just say we kind of move forward here. If there's another situation where there could be, a potential, another, quote, accidental lab leak, how would you guys do things differently is I think a question that I think a lot of people have, and I think would love some kind of clear answers on. And then Phil and Josie, feel free to ask any questions you guys want as well. I don't want to just to take over.
I'm going to be doing super chats in just a little while, so I'm just reading up on those.
So one of the things that I'm most concerned with, so should your dad win, like, what are the chances? What kind of what are you guys planning on doing to push back? Because I assume there's going to be all kinds of lawsuits, regardless of what the actual number count turns into. I imagine there's going to be endless lawsuits about, whether or not your father's the counting was correct and stuff. Does your father have a plan to make sure that the transition were to go smoothly, and that does he have the legal power? Because right now, they're going after all the people.
By the way, that's going to be a factor of. It wouldn't matter if my father's the Republican nominee or not. I mean, they've opened that Pandora's box. They're willing to do that. That's the Mark Elias strategy. They're probably doing it before that. And so, without question, probably don't want to get into the details of all those things because they're in process. But yes, I mean, I don't think, and again, it's not just about my father. I think there's no question that the Democrats will do anything that they can to maintain that power. They will. There's nothing they're not willing to bend, break, or do. To maintain that. They've shown that. I mean, I don't think, honestly, I don't think anyone actually believes with a straight face that, Joe Biden outperformed grossly Obama in 2008. Like, come on. I think they did have the perfect sort of landscape to get away with a lot more and get states to sort of throw away their rights and push even, Republicans in those states on state legislatures just for fear of being bullied because, you're trying to suppress, the average guy in a state legislature. Sure, we'll roll over on our state constitutions. But my father is a Federalist. He does want to leave those things to be decided by the states. But the problem is they were like, well, we got the Republican states. It's like, no, you basically bullied a couple weak people in a Republican legislature to roll over and do something that was otherwise illegal, and now you won't reverse it. You see the stuff that they found, whether it's Georgia or elsewhere in the states. It's like, well, yeah, no, it's clear fraud, but now it's different. Now it's already happened, so we can't do anything about it. I mean, like Wuhan Lab Leak or the other things, like, of course you knew it was nonsense at the time. But we have to combat that. We have to do that with open eyes. I get a little troubled when I see, what are they talking about? Virus X today. It's like, oh boy, here we go again.
Yeah.
You do sort of, you do have to be prepared because, again, I don't know that we know what they're going to do. I don't want to just be reactionary, but I don't think you can also plan for everything because I don't know that there's any level that their depravity won't take them.
That's why a lot of people have those significant concerns with what happened in 2020, making sure that we don't repeat where we were before. And I don't think kind of Donald Trump gave us a clear answer on that yet. But I don't want to just keep harping on that and just going into that. But it's pretty clear that there's some kind of outside force here, an outside influence that's very powerful. It's pretty clear Joe Biden really isn't in charge here. Who is? Who would you say is the biggest power structure in our government that has the most influence?
I mean, it has to probably be the Obamas. The Obamas, Susan Rice, Valerie Jarrett. It's just that team, and that's why Joe is the perfect, install. It's like, the guy will sign whatever we put. He's kind of a guy. It was also interesting. It's like, as bad as I think he's been for America, as a disaster. You don't hate him, right? Well, you can hate Hillary Clinton. Like, it's really easy to hate Hillary Clinton. It's just like every time she opens her mouth, it's like, okay, fine. Like, he was like, a big dumb animal. Like, you don't just kick a big dumb animal just because, and I think that was, worked perfectly. They, threw in Kamala Harris polling at 1% because they could check off a couple boxes and play the identity politics game that seemed to be so effective with the nonsense. I don't know that they can get away with it again as well simply because people see it. Joe's safe because the only person probably significantly worse than Joe Biden would actually be Kamala Harris. Because if you've listened to anything she said over the last 3 years, it's like, even like people that like want to believe, they're like, oh my, like, was it always this bad? I'm like, yes.
That was a great VP pick for Biden. That was a great insurance policy.
Yeah.
That was extremely smart for him to do that.
They'll probably try to figure out how to, you see them slowly, like all of a sudden, now the Hunter laptop matters. Now the bribery stuff matters. You see the Democrats sort of trying to work because they realize that Joe probably isn't the guy that can take them to the promised land anymore. So, but the reality is there's, an infinite amount of, machinations of what these guys can try to pull. And I think you just got to be ready for all of it because, again, I don't think there's a place they wouldn't go.
Yeah. The regime also has a lot of political prisoners, individuals like Ross Ulbricht, Julian Assange, Edward Snowden. What do you think are the chances that someone like Julian Assange actually could get pardoned, could actually be free, since he's not even an American citizen? He's being charged for journalism that used to be commended and respected here, and now the United States literally left him in jail in solitary confinement and made him lose his mind.
That's the thing
that is criminal.
He's not even a U.S. citizen, and he's on the run.
I feel like
we actually talked about this last time I was on the show with Tim. You guys weren't there, but it's interesting. And you asked about like the things you do differently. Like if you asked me like 7-8 years ago, no, he was a traitor to our country. I'm like, no, wait. So he exposed that we were literally lying to not just the world, but to the American citizens. And so in sort of being exposed to the insanity and being, Snowden similarly, perhaps not quite the same level as Assange, but, my mentality on that has gone literally 180 in the last, again, I don't know the exact timing, but probably 7 or 8 years where I would have felt the exact opposite right now. I want these guys out there. I want, I want people who are willing to go to those lengths, frankly, to have a check and balance on, what I believe to be a totally corrupted and broken regime.
A lot of people also have specific questions. We're going to go to Super Chats in just a little bit, I think right after this question, because we have a lot of Super Chats here that have a lot of very interesting questions. But one last question, the Jeffrey Epstein saga.
Yeah.
We still don't have any justice. We still know very little. I kind of do believe that it's kind of the Obamas going after the Clintons by this latest release that we're all seeing with all the documents kind of coming out there, trying to subvert their kind of chances of taking out Biden. But that's just my own personal kind of speculation and theory there. Under the Trump administration, Bill Barr essentially committed a cover-up here. He told us that he was watching the videotapes. There were no videotapes. We were lied every step of the way. Is there a plan to get justice for like the thousands of children here that were trafficked, that were hurt in so many unspeakable ways, as the people on the client list have not been named? They're still walking around.
Well, there was allegedly video. I mean, I've been pretty vocal about this on Twitter. If you follow me, they're like, like really vocal, because it's insane. I mean, there's this week. Well, there's another case that alleges that there's video of Bill Clinton himself. I'm like, wait a minute, like so there is, or there isn't. Like if there is, and he hasn't yet been arrested by the FBI, what's going on? And if there isn't, then someone should come out and say, no, this is nonsense. And I haven't seen either of those things happen, which is truly scary. So no, that one's insane. The fact that they hid it for so long. I mean, my initial commentary on this was like, they've gone to incredible lengths to actually try to tie my father to Jeffrey Epstein for years. He threw him out of Mar-a-Lago in the early 90s for suspicion of stuff like that before anyone really knew what was going on. That's not the story. They show one picture of him over and over again. They don't show the hundreds of Hollywood celebrities and Democrat mega donors that visited Epstein Island with him all the time. I always said, I go, Trump's not on the list because it's the only list that would have actually leaked, or the only name on the list that would have leaked literally within 0.01 second of it being ever put out there. But listen, I think I said it probably 2 or 3 days ago. There's got to be accountability for these people. They did this stuff, and that they can get away with it. There's no worse crime. I mean,
Absolutely.
The pedophile should be shot, as far as I'm concerned. There's no, it's that serious. But just because they're the elites and they're on these lists, and they're getting away with it right now. So we got to do something about it.
And didn't your dad ban Jeffrey Epstein?
Yeah, no,
from Mar-a-Lago?
he literally banned him from Mar-a-Lago
Years
because
ago.
in like the 90s.
Yeah.
Like early, he was like, something's off here. He kept trying to like, there's like weirdo stuff. So he's like, well, I don't know. But
We
like,
heard there was a real estate dispute between them, or was
No,
it
it wasn't
something
a real
deeper?
estate
Can you
dispute.
give us more information about that?
I think it, it was a little, I was probably 12, but he was, it seemed like he was fairly, coming on to a lot of very young people that were hanging around the club and starting
at the club at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then during the first
and he was like, no, that's not going to fly over here.
And then he got banned for that.
Then he was banned, and never. That's why you see
That's all
the
the
one
pictures he
picture
has
that they
brown
show.
hair.
It's like my dad looks like he's 25 years younger because they weren't buddies. They didn't hang out with it. But again, that picture shows up all the time, but not Bill Gates, not George Stephanopoulos, not Bill Clinton going there 37 times. Often the stories I've read, without Secret Service, why on earth would you need that?
Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker, Bill Richardson, all of them.
Yeah, basically the who's who of Democrat policy, and then it's sort of funny because I'm guilty of this one myself. It's like then they were like, well, Stephen Hawking, and then the memes start flying with the wheelchair and stuff like that. I'm like. It's like, well, is that to distract from the actual names? And I was guilty of pushing it, and he happens to be dead. So it's like, well, that's the guy we'll throw under the bus.
Yes.
But the guys that are still very much alive, that are still very much at centers of power within government, within corporate America, it's like, oh, we're not going to talk about them.
Yeah.
So, no, that doesn't fly.
Yep, Sergey Brin, a lot of individuals implicated here. Josie has...
And by the way, it's only the first part of, that... My understanding is it's only the first part of the list. Like, it's not even the names we've seen, as big as it was, is not even like.
There's a lot more
There's
powerful,
a lot.
prominent
By the way,
individuals.
I imagine the really most powerful, maybe you never even see because they've been able to figure it out.
Exactly.
Well, there's also redacted names, and look in the B's at the redacted names and see what could possibly fit in there. Anyway, we're going to jump to super chats. So Fitzberg here says, please talk to Don Jr. about graphene.
I think Ian did that earlier.
We did that.
We did it a little bit. I mean, it sounds kind of interesting, and I love that.
Yep.
Since China sort of has taken control of all the rare earth minerals and copper mines around the world, I love this concept of conductivity, and it seems like does a great job undercutting them. I gotta learn a lot more about it because I don't know all that much. But in the brief few minutes that we spoke about it, sort of fascinating.
Yeah. Ian got it out as soon as...
It feels like the kind of technology that China would buy to quash so that they maintain their power, but we got to make sure that doesn't happen too.
We have another super chat here from Yanette Santana saying, is it true the reason Epstein Ghislaine recruited the groundskeeper's daughter from Mar-a-Lago?
That I don't know.
Got it.
That I don't know.
Josie, you want to
All
do the
right,
next
Keith Hansen, great seeing you in Iowa. Stay warm and come back when it's warmer sometimes. See the Los Hills. Cool.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's beautiful here, honestly. It really is.
It's cold. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
beautiful. I'm from
Yeah.
Miami. I don't know if you could call this place.
I
The only
live
reason
in
Josie
Massachusetts.
says that is because she's from Massachusetts. It's not actually beautiful right now. I promise. It's freezing.
Yeah, it's just
gray.
cold. Although the last time I was here, I was actually hanging out. I got invited when we first started the political thing. I'm an outdoors guy. I'm a hunter and all that stuff. And Terry Branstad, who was like the longest serving governor in the United States, he was the governor of Iowa. And they did this like sort of annual governor's hunt. It was about bring business in, and you go out deer hunting. And it was during the I guess 2015, 2016, like polar vortex. And I remember sitting out on a hill, and with the wind chill factor, it was minus 57. And I get in because I'm actually into these things. A lot of the other people were just there for business, and everyone else, I guess, had come in. And the governor was like, "It's like you actually sat out there that whole time." I was like, "Yeah, I'm here in Iowa. I was able to draw tags, like
Trying to get some
hunting.
hunting.
You know that-
trying to get it in." I'm like, I guess I earned some props for probably being dumb enough to actually subject myself to the horrors of the polar vortex.
Serious?
That is a really good segue into our next super chat from Bob OIF III. It's going to be so cold that Jussie will need bodyguards. Great segue. All right, let's see. You want to do another one?
I don't have them in front of me.
Okay, I got them. Let me see. All right.
We got one from Kendall Bird. I'm just seeing the new ones that are popping up.
Okay,
Go
cool.
from you do the ones in the very beginning. I'll do the ones that pop up
I
right
love
now
it.
for me. I only have 3. We got one asking Don Jr. if he would run for office in the future.
You may not have a choice. I don't know that I want the day job right now. I do like some of the parts of, let's call it the game, because frankly, there's a component of it that is, even though the stakes are pretty serious. I'm not afraid to sort of be out there. I'm not afraid to fight. I'm not afraid to do a lot of the things that so many of the guys in the Republican Party are like, no, we won't do that. So, I don't know that I want the day job. I don't know that I want to be one of, 435 people in Congress or something like that initially. I don't know that I could just jump right into, the presidency or whatever. I think my father's kind of unique in that way. But, the more I do this, the more I, sort of understand that we need more people from outside of that sort of government, entrenched bureaucracy whose turn it is, who just, who don't need it, maybe who don't even want it, but they're just doing it for the right reasons. And so you never know. I never want to shut it out, but you do have to want the day job part, not just sort of, the combative part, because, unfortunately, there is a lot of that stuff you have to deal with.
I agree. Mr. Barefoot Blue Jean says 5 years prison terms for anyone hiring illegals. If they can't work, they'll stop coming. Actually something interesting, the articles of the Constitution are actually silent on immigration. The federal authorities limited to naturalization laws. So the 10th Amendment says that all undelegated rights, they're reserved for the states, or respectively the people. So he's right. And the Biden regime has no authority to mess with Texas. So if y'all didn't know that, it's a states thing, the border. And until it comes to invasion.
It should be, but then the problem is they say, well, if you don't do this, we'll cut off all your other funding for this. Now you no longer have roads, and you no longer have,
It's blackmail.
Yeah, it is. By the way, the whole thing is an extortion scheme, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's the entire Department of Transportation. That's how they get the compliance from all kinds of different ordinances that they want to pass down.
Can we get Ron Paul ahead of the Federal Reserve? Is that possible?
Get Rand to be the vice president, maybe?
All right. MZ Kim 1223 says, along with deportation, arrest and fine people who employ illegals, make it very difficult for them to get jobs. Employers need to be held accountable. They like the illegal immigrants. They can work for nothing.
Yeah, that's the.
Off
I mean,
the
the problem is there's a lot of we've always had to be careful because we're sort of out there in the public eye, and everyone's trying to sue us and throw us in jail for everything. But I mean, we run golf courses and hotels, and the average guy doing those things is it's a lot easier to pay cash off the books. I mean, you saw a lot of this. Even beyond the illegals, just with some of the welfare and incentive programs, there's a lot of people, that I know that ran small businesses, and being from, the real estate background and construction trades, like they'd quit, they'd work 3 days a week off the books, they'd take their unemployment, they were net ahead by 30% of what they were doing in an otherwise even reasonably well-paying job, and everyone's gaming that system. So, I conceptually it's a great idea, but I think,
Yeah.
Let
me see. Polly Puree says, Tim, get well. Oh. And then right beneath that, free men die free, says CIA poison Tim, disease X super spreader event.
Everyone.
Do you think that, they gave, you think they poisoned Tim because he's talking with me?
Everyone in the comment section is telling me that I put laxatives in his drink.
Yeah.
I didn't put laxative in his drink. There's another super chat here from James Richard saying, ask Junior why the first time in America lockdowns occurred under Trump. If this was the deep state, how would it be different this time around?
Again, I think we've seen what was going on at the time. I think to be, you got to be realistic. Everything you can look back on and say, oh well, you should. At the time, if you didn't listen to Anthony Fauci, you don't think that the Congress would have impeached him 100%? Everyone in the media would have pushed it. I think we've learned from that. I think my father did leave all of those things to the states, and I think you saw a big difference between sort of conservatives and liberals in how that handles. And there's also been quite a bit of revisionist history in even the way a lot of the conservatives handle those things. But I do think it was sort of a black swan event that people just didn't know. And are you actually killing American citizens? Initially, and then once you slowly start figuring that out, you can handle it accordingly. I don't think anyone's going for that ever again. I think that's probably out of the playbook, except for when you see again the World Economic Forum talking about disease X, because you're like,
yeah.
I guess they could try it again, just hoping to run a similar playbook. I just don't think that anyone in America would fall for it.
The 10th Amendment was the fail-safe written into the Constitution, the 9th and the 10th Amendment. And those were the fail-safe for if we ever had a tyrannical government again. They're going to have 50 tyrannical governors in order to make our country tyrannical again. So we saw that come into effect during COVID. We saw governors like, DeSantis was pretty good. South Dakota governor was great, and they weren't they weren't caving to the suggestions of the federal government. So that's something good to know.
We have another super chat from Matthew Hammond saying, how are we going to deal with the NGOs that are facilitating illegal immigration?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually sort of amazing because you see some of them, linked to a church, and they're doing this, but I'm like, they're doing the trafficking that we're talking about it. So, I think this was the other one where sort of the Ackman thing has been interesting, right? They're pointing out where these guys have been funding some of this stuff that they don't even realize the full, they feel like they're doing good, but then you actually look into what these organizations are actually doing. On paper it's great and they give you a beautiful award, but what's going on, again, I think we have to expose so much more of what's actually happening, and then, you got to put pressure on people to be able to just, stop funding that. These guys, the heartstrings have been pulled, for all over the place, and sort of the creation of these charities as being infallible, and so everyone wants to donate so that they too can get public acknowledgement and an award for not really doing much but for using their name to show up at a rubber chicken dinner. I think we got to just call out as much of it as we can.
Yeah, I agree.
And we got to stop funding it. But there needs to be an appetite for people. People have to understand that, and they have to actually just stop doing it. But
well, you say an appetite, but I mean, we've already had. I think we fielded like three questions so far about immigration.
No, I get it, but there's got to be an appetite from the other people that are making laws and the people in Congress and stuff. We can all agree together, but we need to put pressure on the people who are actually making those decisions to do that.
Definitely. This next super chat from Alan Sharer. I'm sorry I said your name wrong. Josie in a beanie. Next demonic calendar.
That's a personal one. Phil, if you want to get out your phone and look for some of these super
You guys quite
chats.
demonic.
Yeah,
Quite demonic.
We got another
Well,
super
I
chat.
took down Jenna Ellis, so.
We got a super chat from Lurch685 saying, in his second administration, I hope Trump is more fair to the Palestinians now that he realizes Benjamin Netanyahu isn't interested in peace or a deal. Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem like there's a good relationship between Benjamin and Donald.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I mean, we sort of beat that one, to death earlier, but no, there isn't. But I don't know. There's a lot with that one. Mm-hmm. There's a lot with that one.
Very nuanced.
Much of it terrible, but also very nuanced.
Mm-hmm. Joe A says Don Jr. is great and get well soon, Tim.
Thank you. Most people hate my guts, at least on social media.
It's an overrepresentation.
Yeah, no, it's fine. By the way, it doesn't matter. It's sort of I sort of enjoy it. Like,
Patricia Swisher says get better quickly, Tim. Oh, these are so nice.
I have another one from Heath Hansen saying, please ask Trump Jr. if land reform or measures to stop land hoarding, examples Bill Gates, BlackRock, etc., are on the agenda.
I don't know. It's a little, maybe I'll defer to Josie. Constitutionally, if you're an American citizen, should you not be able to? Listen, I'm a very big skeptic of the guy trying to grow fake meat, buying up all the meat farms, and while preaching climate and talking about cows farting, destroying the future of the world. I mean, you'd be a moron not to. That said, I don't know that I love the idea of banning that either, right? I mean,
what was the exact question? I was reading these.
The exact question was if there's going to be anything done about BlackRock and Bill Gates buying up all the land everywhere.
Interesting story. So Thomas Jefferson is the reason why we have property taxes. When he was over in France, he saw how they were dealing, because when America was new, they were dealing with people hoarding properties. They were dealing with them hoarding land and not cultivating it. So Thomas Jefferson saw that when they were doing that in France, they did the property tax, and this prevented normal people from being able to hoard land. But now we're at a point where there's billionaires hoarding land. So it's beyond that. So I mean, I guess the right thing to do would be to abolish taxes.
Well,
start over.
That sounds
Right?
I like
Yeah,
that
that's a great idea.
myself.
Fine with this.
See,
So,
it's not working.
I'm not sure I'm getting anything out of my tax dollars, and I know I write a pretty big check every year.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you're familiar with the story, but Bill Gates on national television kind of bragged about how Donald Trump wanted to make him a science advisor. I don't know if that's true or not, or if that's just Bill Gates lying to the general public, since, of course, he's also on a lot of lists that are very curious, and he's also working on a lot of really weird projects that I think are very questionable.
I was involved, at least peripherally, in the transition process and stuff like that. I never saw that, so I don't know that yeah, I don't believe that to be accurate.
So Robert Clark has a question about FICO scores. He asks, will your father reform FICO so us lower middle class / upper poverty have a fighting chance?
I mean, another one that I don't really know. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done there. Whether it's FICO scores, whether it's interest rates, whether it's this. I mean, it is seemingly designed to make that you're talking about BlackRock. I'm more concerned about BlackRock buying up all the residential housing in America and forcing everyone to be permanent renters. And once they control a big supply of that, because they still need to generate money with the land. So I don't think they're just, as funds, they're just buying land to not have cows on it. Maybe they're more evil than that, but I am more concerned about them buying up all the housing, controlling a big enough portion of that market, jacking up rents, and basically making everyone have no choice but to do that. They clearly, you see, the manipulation within the Fed, the insanity there. They're going to try to lower interest rates a little bit to make it seem like Joe Biden is doing a good job to push some of these things down. I think that'll still screw up inflation, but there's a lot of complexity here, and you see. Again, the gamesmanship being played, right? They get to, the job numbers, and look at the job numbers are great, and then we revise them 2 months later, and well, they were never actually great, but they've done this 11 out of 12 months, or 12 reporting cycles, I guess, and it's like, wait a minute, like why don't you just give us the real numbers, stop lying to us? It's clear you're trying to create that narrative, that incentive. So, I think there's a lot that needs to be done within these systems to make it fair for the average American, but there are still. Unfortunately, I don't think you can do everything just to do that without creating a lot of the stuff that we would like to avoid.
Yeah, there's one here. I don't know if somebody wants to check on this real quick. Reports are coming in. This is, Maddow G. Jones. Reports are coming in that Iran has bombed a U.S. embassy and has hit a U.S. naval ship with surface-to-surface missiles. If somebody wants to check on that.
I can.
Okay.
Oh, my.
I want to say thank you to Bismuth, Ian, what was it, subsalicylate? Bismuth. It makes your stomach feel better.
Okay.
I'm so glad you're
I needed
feeling better.
what was it, 10 minutes for the,
Was this like a scene from like the Dumb and Dumber toilet scene, Tim? Like the legs up in the air?
No.
I bought a portrait of that just yesterday.
Oh, really?
belongs
It's
to
one of my
every
favorite examples. I was like,
He was
man.
yelling at the
My
porcelain.
wonderful
beside him.
girlfriend patting me on the back while I was washing my hands, hunched over, and then after a few minutes, started to feel better. I think I know what it is. I had deep fried chicken skin today.
Ooh.
It was the most delicious thing I've ever had, but it's made.
Was it with seed oils?
I have no idea.
Sorry.
It was probably with seed oils.
I had that once. I like sort of food from all over the world, and I had that once in India where I got a little adventurous, and I guess I must have disobeyed some of the rules there, and yeah, it was like 3 days of that reenactment of that scene that was kind of brutal. Like someone saw me a week later, like a buddy saw me a week later, and they're like, "Dude, are you okay? You look literally green." I was like, "It's been a long."
That was one of the most famous videos ever, that Dumb and Dumber scene that always kind of replays in my mind as well.
Turbo Lex.
Exactly. It's absolutely incredible. We got another super chat here by Callan Shaw Indie Game saying, please ask if we finally get alien disclosure.
It sort of feels like, haven't we done that now? It does feel like it's the shiny object. Like the rest of the world is falling apart. So they're like, hey guys, there's aliens everywhere. And honestly,
People are starting
no
to
one
really
cares.
not care.
No one cares. Everyone's like, I don't know. I got other stuff to worry about. It's so much worse than that.
You're 100% right. No one really.
It was funny. I actually had my father we did a thing for like the campaign, like back in like 2020 or whatever. And I was like, it's the only thing I want to know. And he was like, you sort of made a joke about it, whatever it was, but it was legitimately the only thing I want to know. And now it's like, it's pretty clear. We have these sightings. They're releasing it. And like, I no longer care because like there's like real stuff to worry about. But the aliens are coming here. They see who's leading us. They were like, it's not worth it.
Is it aliens or is it interdimensional beings? As Tucker Carlson has even come out and said that the government made a deal with some of these interdimensional beings as well. Is there anything potentially that you could even tell us about that? Or is it classified?
Yes. I'm going to go with it's classified because I have no idea.
We're dealing with demons, aren't we?
I think it's talking plasma, which is where they take lasers from base stations and they triangulate them in the air. It creates a ball of plasma. They can move around like a laser pointer. A lot of it's that when they're like, how can a craft move like that speed?
Well,
There's so much drone.
I've always been sort of a believer in aliens, only just because, like, how could you not with the vastness of the universe? Like we're the only ones, like no. maybe it's more advanced than us, but like just statistically playing out something that's essentially infinitesimally large, like there's probably someone, and there's probably someone more advanced than us, and there's probably plenty of things or whatever that are less advanced than us, but I don't know. There has to be.
Yeah.
When you weren't on the show, but we pulled up Talking Plasma, and I can't remember, it was last week or whatever, and we showed the video of how they do it. It's where they use multiple lasers, have them all intersect so you point 2, 3 lasers, and it
Don't cross beams. Like,
But-
is
but
this
it-
like Ghostbusters? Like,
yes. When the lasers cross, it creates a ball of light, and you can move it around at the speed of light. So theoretically, if you get 100,000 of these lasers, you can project a 3-dimensional image in space and have it move around at the speed of light. People will think it's aliens or something when it's just a light show.
how do you move it at the speed of light? Though? Wouldn't it be limited to how fast you could move the
Right.
laser? Which
You move it at the
meaning
speed.
light is fast. I don't know.
So it's the lasers move a little bit, but the exponential speed increase based on the
I guess far enough away, I guess you could create an arc that gets there.
right. It looks like it's moving
Yeah.
super fast and stopping and then starting.
It's interesting.
We got another super chat from Jeremy Hammond saying, Don Jr., what's your opinion of Bitcoin and the newly approved ETFs?
Jeffrey Hammond. I was just going to read that one.
Potato.
We're both
Yeah.
interested.
I don't know enough about the ETF. I saw obviously, launched. Listen, I love anything that's not sort of controlled by the central government at this point. So I like the concept of it. I imagine it's being infiltrated and they're doing whatever they can. And you see all the, the governmental linked ones. I'm like, it sort of defeats the purpose of why I like it. It's why I keep my 1970 Toyota FJ, because there's not a chip that they can just shut it down. And I figured the government, whether it's our government or other governments, if the Chinese are hacking the Pentagon, they could probably figure out how to, get into the blockchain. And I understand it's, very complicated, but there's probably guys that can do that. And so, I love the concept of it because I just have so little faith in actually our own governments and our own currency right now.
Let's see. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, shout out to the travel team of IRL Smooth Shows. That's nice. Thank you.
That's Serge, in case you're wondering. Oh, Kellen's in the
Kellen,
house,
too.
We got another one.
Andrew's out
Over at
here.
Mosaic,
Mr.
shout out
Mix.
for all the stuff they set up.
Oh, yeah. Mosaic gets a big shout out, too, for all the stuff they set up.
Yes, and shout out to
Cameras,
Mosaic.
stages, all
Tip
the
your bartender.
Let me see.
I have another one here from Cedric Stanley saying, Don, any chance you could talk Luke into telling his T-shirt people to give us an option to have the printing on the back so I can buy a hoodie? No, that won't happen. All on front on thebestpoliticalshirts.com.
Let me see. Colin Doherty says, Congress and Senate are the problem. How do we get term limits passed on the people who have to vote to limit themselves? You just answered it.
Yeah, it ain't gonna happen. What you really got to do is you got to vote people in there who who don't need the job. Again, the guys.
Thomas Massey doesn't need the job.
Yeah, well, a J.D. Vance in the Senate, guys like that, guys who've accomplished stuff in the outside world, they're going to go in there, they can fix things. If you get the entire makeup of Congress to be those people, you won't actually be concerned about term limits because they'll actually do the right thing. And so, I think it's so important we do. We talk obviously, and for me, I'm biased. It's a presidential race, but like, the reality, man, there's times when I see what's going on in the world, like I'm more concerned about like running for your school board than I am running for Congress or running for Senate. It's like, I think we could actually probably affect more change, eliminating that indoctrination at the lowest levels of government rather than the highest and sort of going the other way through there. So, we got to get involved in all of these things.
It's a bottom-up approach that's going to fix the country. I mean, the communists, for all of their disgusting, awful, unhuman things that they do, they know how to infiltrate a government, and they did it from a bottom-up approach. And that's the school boards, sheriff's departments, select boards, and they work their way into the state and then into the federal and then into every leadership in every institution in our country. And that's how we beat them, by their own tactics.
If we did a convention of states, because that'd be another way to get term limits passed, bypass Congress, we convene 39 of the states or 32 or 33. Would that be is that too risky?
11? Are we 11 states short on that now, or is it less now? Or
Someone
8 states?
mentioned that's a big Pandora's box you might not want to open because you can change a lot of laws.
They can get in
Yeah,
there and
I could
say
see
no
that,
more
by the way.
Second Amendment. Yeah.
But you can't.
Everyone
set a
brings it up.
process, though. You can set rules that these are the only things that are actually on the docket for the convention. So.
I get it,
That's
but
true, yeah.
I just sort of feel like the other side has weaponized sort of that stuff so well that I think they'd probably do it better than us, and they'd figure out a way to do it again and eliminate those rules. And
Fair enough.
I don't know that I've trust our leadership enough to actually do these things right and not just to get rolled. I mean,
Yeah,
So
I would hope for.
I'd love to believe it conceptually, but
That
I'm like,
That's one of my biggest problems with the Republicans now is finding really good, competent leaders. I don't feel like just like you were talking earlier, it's not a deep well of leaders that you can actually look to on the conservative side that are actually, America first and qualified to actually run.
yeah, no,
anything at all.
that's correct. There's a couple of guys that are really good with sound bites that have no chance of actually getting anything done. And I see this a lot. It's sort of like no, but if we just did this person to be great, it's like, yeah, but that's just not ever going to happen in D.C. Like we actually still have to play within the realm of reality. So we always have our wish list, but like so much has to happen before you could ever even possibly think about this wish list. But we get obsessed about if it's just this guy. And then that guy gets some power, and you realize he's just going to get rolled and fail, and hey, I think we see some of that going on right now with the Speaker of the House. It's going to be,
This is a good segue, actually.
True.
And the new Speaker, it's going to be so much better. It's like, is it?
Inspirable Support says, Dawn, who is your top selection for your dad's VP?
He said it. We already answered this question.
Oh, well,
During the
this
show.
was asked.
Well,
I
think we said it sort of out of the. I talked about liking a lot of what Vivek is saying out of the sort of the people that were running.
Yeah.
I think there's other people that would be great. I've mentioned a J.D. Vance or something like that. There's, there's definitely, a couple people like that. It's a small group. It's that could be great in those positions.
I like the idea of a bulletproof vest. I mean, the way that it would normally go is he tried not to alienate the people who hate him and get somebody safe, like a Mike Pence or a Mike Johnson. So
a Mike Pence made sense in 2016 because you needed to sort of balance out. You needed a yin and yang. I don't know that you need that anymore. Donald Trump wasn't the dictator that they said. Joe Biden's far more of a dictator or a fascist than anything Trump ever was. I think that soundbite. They're desperately trying to do that again, but I don't know that it plays as well as they think it does anymore because you have 4 years to look back on.
Let's get one more in there. We got one from Ryan Lavelli saying, what's your opinion on the solution to the Ukraine war?
Cut off the money. It's the only way you get them to the table, right? As long as, we're literally creating the oligarch class of billionaire in Ukraine with whatever's being siphoned off, whether it's Zelensky, whether it's this, while they send young men to die as cannon fodder on the front lines because they couldn't care less. It's fucking disgusting what's going on there. That it's allowed to happen, that we shut down anything. It's so obvious. Nothing's ever going to change there if the money keeps flowing. My father would have been like, hey, you got one more month of this, and if you're not at the table, it's done.
Yeah.
Guess what? Zelensky wouldn't have a chance if we shut it down. So he'd come to the table, and they'd come up with something.
Absolutely.
I agree with that.
It's so ridiculous that we're in the second year of this thing, that you've had, countless lives lost on all sides. But the press, the Ukrainians they're winning. They shot a Russian tank. Meanwhile, they had a strategic withdrawal from the Donbass region. I'm like, wait a minute. So they withdrew from a quadrant of the country, but they shot a tank or an armored personnel vehicle, and they're winning. They were never winning. They were never winning. They were probably never going to win. But as long as we kept feeding them infinite money, dragging out, prolonging the effort, all we've done is kill hundreds of thousands of innocent men, half of whom were probably indifferent to some of the politics because they were ethnically Russian anyway. It's disgusting what's going on there right now. And it's going to keep going as long as we're basically writing checks, taking care of them with no accountability, no tracking of the money, no tracking of the weapons. It's insane. It's insane. And, again, I've been very vocal about this one for quite some time, and you knew it was going bad when my father did this, the first CNN town hall. He was like, hey, man, all I want is the death to stop. How dare you?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to kill every living Russian? I'm like, what is going on here? That was even guys like Joe Rogan were like, that was the perfect answer. It was the only answer, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And, that war machine, we hadn't been in a war in a year since Afghanistan. So it's like, it was time. They got to get that thing cranking back going.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think we're already over time. This was a really interesting podcast. This was really fascinating. Thank you so much for
Thanks,
coming
guys.
down
Thanks for
here.
having me.
It was awesome. If people want to find out more about you, if people want to check out your website, what would be that website? Where can they support you?
On most of the social media platforms, on Truth, on Twitter, DonaldJTrumpJr.com, at Donald J. Trump Jr. I got my Triggered podcast is on Rumble on Mondays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. Check that out live. I have these conversations. I do a lot of the same sort of ask me anythings, quite often, and or have other guests, often politics, but other stuff. If you like my outdoor stuff, you can follow us at the Field Ethos Journal. Sort of have a cool sort of unapologetic sort of outdoor, witty, good writing. A little bit of everything.
Thank you so much for taking our questions. And Tim, where can people find you?
Well, Luke promised to discuss something that was not so family friendly in the Members Only Uncensored show, and you had pointed out very early on, we can talk about that, right? So we'll talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
T-shirts, Epstein, a few other things. So head over to timcast.com, click Join Us, become a member, so we can have this Members Only Uncensored show where you as members can call in and talk to us. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Smash that like button.
Phil.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, YouTube, the internet.
Yeah, I guess we put up our stuff on Spotify and iTunes podcast as well. My podcast there, so if you're driving, Triggered. If you can check it out there too.
Rock and roll. I'm Ian Crossland. What's happening? Catch you guys later. Peace.
I am Josie, the Redheaded Libertarian. You can find me on X at TRHL Official. You can also check out my show, which is Spaces with Josie, and it streams on X and also on timcast.com for members only. And that's on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
I'm also on Rumble. It's a great platform. I am on thebestpoliticalshow.com. We're growing there very fast. If we reach 100K, Clint Russell gets tasered. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're almost there. We could get there right now with you guys just subscribing to thebestpoliticalshow.com. Clint is watching right now. He's not really happy. This was a great show. Tim, I hope you feel better. Are we still doing the after show? We are doing the after show. Yeah. Stay tuned for the after show on timcast.com. It's going to be really fun and really spicy. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more.